6 o'clock.
It's close now.
Maybe you're looking at the seconds, not the.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. Yeah, I'll say 6:07. 6 o'clock and 7 seconds. Yeah, you're right.
Not 7.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to start this meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Make sure my phone's turned off. Glasses on. All right, first item on the agenda is the roll call. Mr. Brown, do you have the roll?
Yes, sir. Looks like all board members are present except for Mr. Daniels.
All righty, thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is approval of the regular agenda. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Ms. Andrews, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? A what?
The consent agenda?
Regular agenda. So no discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is adoption of consent agenda. Is there a motion on that? Motion approved by Ms. Andrews. Second by Ms. Hawkins. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lacy.
On the bids and purchases, can we move item number 10 to the agenda, please? To the agenda so we can discuss it.
And adoption of consent agenda. Mine's just going through 7, Mr. Lacy. What?
Well, it says, number 3, business, bids and purchases. And you click on it, item number 10,
I don't have an item number.
which is the iPads for 3.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's under the finance report. It's the
Oh,
iPad.
oh,
It's the
so-
middle school iPad purchase.
Okay, okay. Item number 3. Okay, so that's what we're moving to the regular agenda.
He just wants to move number 10 out of number 3.
So you want to move number 10 out of number 3?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, to the regular agenda, we'll put that under, I guess, unfinished business. Put that item number 3 under unfinished business. Somebody could remind me of that when we get there. Okay, got my written one here. Okay. Anything further on that? All in favor say aye. All opposed?
No.
Got one no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and action regarding request. I've done scrolled down here. We was looking for that other thing. I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Consideration of minutes, discussion and action regarding the minutes of the June 13th regular meeting. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Ms. Hayes. Second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is recognition and hearing of delegations. We have several people that want to speak tonight, and we will get through this list. Let each one of you know that when you come to the podium, please give your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak on an agenda item. And the first one is Patricia Smith. Ms. Smith.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Smith. My address is 112 England Place in Hendersonville. Most of you who know me know that I have a background in education, that a retired principal, not from this county, but from another state. I started teaching 51 years ago this fall, and you all can do the math. I've done all kinds of jobs in the school system I was in. I've been a parent, I've been a single parent, I'm a grandparent of kids in Sumner County schools, and those of you who know me know that reading is my passion. I love to help people, kids love reading. And personally, I didn't start loving reading till I was in high school. And that's when my passion started. As a matter of fact, I'm still teaching reading. I'm volunteering tomorrow in S'more's reading camp that's being conducted at my church, Community Church of Hendersonville. And we've been doing this for a number of years. And this is why I am speaking in favor of the book, Perks of Being a Wallflower. Please keep that book in our schools. It was published in 1999, which means that 6 generations of high school students have passed through your schools reading, and this book's been available to them. And nobody's been hurt. Nobody. As a matter of fact, to the contrary, many kids have said it saved their lives. It was a wonderful thing. So please keep this book. We know it doesn't hurt anybody. As a matter of fact, I don't believe that the people who have brought the complaints about this book care about children at all. Because if they did, they'd know that reading needs to be a passion. If you're going to have good readers, if they cared about children, they would be able to understand how empathy can be developed by reading realistic fiction, and that's what this book is. It's realistic fiction, and it respects and honors the students, the characters in the book, and the students who read it. I personally believe that the people who are complaining about this book after it's been in our libraries for over 2 decades just want to control by disruption. They want to waste your time. They want to waste my time. And I think that's bad. I think you guys have many, many more important things to do, and there's many, many more important things that are a risk to our children, not books, and not books that have been in our libraries for a couple of decades. I would like to read a quote by Judy Blume, who wrote the Ramona books, and wonderful books that she's written for years that have been in all of our schools. She says, let children read whatever they want and then talk about it with them. If parents and kids can talk together, we won't have as much censorship because we won't have as much to fear. That's what I did with my kids. I recommend it. I recommend that, and I think it's wonderful that you have a policy in Sumner County that if parents don't want their children to read certain things, that they can do what they need to do to take care of that. They can go into their schools and they can talk to their people, their librarians and their teachers and their principals and their counselors, and they can tell them, this is what I don't want my kid to read, and I want you to make sure that doesn't happen, and that will happen in our schools because you have written a really good policy that sees to that, and I really appreciate that. I would ask you to trust your parents to take care of their own children. We don't need people telling us, other people, some of them who don't even have kids in our schools. We don't need them telling us what our students should read and what they shouldn't read. Trust your excellent staff, especially your librarians. Your teachers are marvelous. I had a friend ask me recently if I believed in developmentally appropriate reading, and I said, well, I've got 2 master's degrees. I've got one in special education, and I got in 72.
Ms. Smith, your time's up if you go ahead and wrap up.
So thank you so much. Please trust your people, and please be mindful that you're not taken advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Skylar DeVos, come on down and give your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes to speak on an agenda item. One thing I forgot to say too is always direct your comments to the chair and don't call out anybody by name. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Skylar DeVos, and for the record, my address is 120 Donman Drive in Hendersonville. Dr. Radine Sims Bishop is a scholar and an educator, and she's famous for writing about how all of us as readers need to be able to encounter books that offer us mirrors and windows. Mirrors that give us an opportunity to see ourselves reflected in a new way in what we read. Windows into the experiences of others whose lives are not our own. Charlie, who is the narrator of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, he has lived through experiences that are not my own. His story is not my story, but I understand him. I've been given a window into the life of another person, and my heart has grown because of it. There are mirrors, too. I see in Charlie my own introverted tendencies. I recognize the feeling of wanting to be a wallflower, the desire sometimes to pull back from the world and distance oneself and just watch from where it's safe. And just as Charlie's friends, his own broken and imperfect friends, reach out to him and pull him through to make sure that he sees what it is to be connected to others, to be loved, I feel that same pull in my heart. The reminder that a life worth living is worth living with others, that we are all deserving of love, that life requires participation and risk. People who would skim through a book like this only to find the most risque bits to read aloud or to post for shock value are doing nothing more significant than the kids who pick up a dictionary only to read the dirty words out of it. And their actions tell you no more about the book than the same things. Context matters. The story matters. Books like this that offer hope without sugarcoating the pain and the challenges of this world are books that save lives, that help readers understand that they are not alone. And anyone who would ban a book like this, you think you're protecting children, you are not. You are discarding the very lifeboats that might save a child that you have never met. Or maybe even your own. And if you can put this much energy into just raising your own children, they will be fine, even if they accidentally read a book like this. And if it doesn't mirror back to them their own experiences, then maybe it will be a window for them into the lives of someone else, and their own heart will be enlarged, their compassion for others will grow, and all of us will be the better for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeVos. Next is Lynn Baker. Ms. Baker, if you give your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Sure. My name is Lynn Baker. I live at 754 Greenfield Lane, Castalian Springs. And I am a Sumner County resident, obviously. I've lived here for 9 years. Both of my sons have gone to Sumner County schools, both at Schaefer Middle School, Gallatin High School. I have now one of those sons that is at Austin Peay and one is at Ball State. So education in Sumner County and the state of Tennessee is very important to me from the perspective as a parent. It's also very important to me from the perspective of an educator. My bachelor's degree is in English literature. My doctorate degree is in education. with emphasis in curriculum and instruction and a specialization in literacy. So from that perspective of an educator, I really want to see the value of literacy be upheld in our schools. As a citizen, it's also very concerning to me that a book that is written for young adults as the audience with the intention of benefiting them would be potentially pulled from a library, from a school library. You know, I will be perfectly honest, like many people here tonight, I didn't want to come out in the rain. I'd much rather have been home reading a book than coming out to protect one. But that really is what I felt I needed to do. And not just to protect the book, but to protect the readers of that book. And these readers are young people who don't have a voice in the same way that we do. So I had to come out here and talk about this book. So some of the things that I'd like to share, if you know, you may know already or be familiar with. I know you've received many emails, but this book was named by the American Library Association as the best books for young adults in 2000, the year after it was published in 1999. And it's because the book deals with issues that are important to young people in an honest, transparent way. It validates the experiences, the feelings that kids who are actually going through what the book talks about. You know, validates their experiences, and it also helps kids who aren't having those experiences have insights into what that might be like, what those experiences might be like. Experts have discussed the benefits on mental health of literacy and literature relevant to young people. And certainly this book could be available to students in a public library and not necessarily the school library. But we have to consider the issue of access. The hours of the public libraries, the locations are not available to all students. And so here it becomes an equity issue for students who really may be struggling and could benefit from what so many young people in forums just like this across the country where students have spoken up about the book, what it meant to them. So removing the book is giving students who are experiencing these challenges the message that they should not be seen. And that was the purpose of the writer's intention. Parents who don't want their children to read the book, they can inform the school library. But parents who want their children to grow through literature should not have this opportunity be taken away. So I'd ask that you please vote to keep the book, Perks of Being a Wildflower, in school libraries at Sumner County Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Ms. Squires?
Hello, my name is Sarah Squires. I live at 134 Chesapeake Harbor in Hendersonville. I wrote this speech 30 times. And I've honestly just come to the conclusion that the real objections to this book, it has very little to do with the mature content. Sure, the passages that have been used out of context and posted in groups for their shock value, you know, groups that have students in them, I might add, you know, those passages, that tactic will work for some, as you will probably hear tonight. But I think what so many people are afraid of, what they fear about books like Perks of Being a Wallflower, is that their kids may read this book and be introduced to people that they have been taught to fear. They might learn to love and have compassion for those that they have been taught to judge, those that they have been, in some cases, taught to hate. While Perks was clearly written to reach young people who have experienced some pretty intense, tragic, life-altering, events, I think that the audience that Perks can reach and make a real difference in is those who have not experienced those challenges. I ask that you keep this book, I think it is important that you redirect your attention to other things in our schools. Our schools have so much to offer our kids, and we spend so much time dealing with books when I think you guys can make a really big difference in other places. So I appreciate you listening, and that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Squires. Ava Craighead.
Hello, my name is Ava Craighead. I live at 180 Noble Park Circle here in Gallatin, and I'm an upcoming freshman at Gallatin High School. And I'm very grateful to be speaking with you all tonight. First, I would like to say I support the decisions and recommendations by the School Reconsiderations Board to retain Perks of Being a Wallflower in school libraries. Now, I just finished reading this book 2 days ago. Perks of Being a Wallflower broadened my view of certain aspects of the world and what people deal with throughout their lives. It represents and addresses topics such as sexual assault, abuse, both physical and sexual, domestic violence, beneficial and harmful relationships, the effects of drugs and alcohol, being queer in an unwelcoming society, and the ways different people experience and deal with the trauma and various situations they are forced to go through. Yes, these are heavy topics. However, this can be eye-opening and educational to the reader. As time progresses, we are starting to see more and more representation of mental health and bringing awareness to the multiple types of abuse. This book is an example of that. It has helped and continues to help to introduce and teach students about these situations and their effects. It is important to students and everyone else in this room that we support discussions of these topics, allow and support questions being asked, and show they are not alone. Allow our students and their parents to be trusted with what they are reading. I would like to read you a small excerpt of the book. So if these words make sense, if you have known these stories yourself, if you experienced or witnessed abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, if you have struggled with the mental illness of any kind, or love someone who does, if you are surrounded by those who call what you are different instead of beautiful, if your mind or body has cried out for peace and acknowledgement and understanding, just know you are part of an infinite family. These people who have been through terrible things and survived them. If you are reading this, you won today. This excerpt alone addresses the multiple themes and topics throughout the book. It brings attention to those who are struggling with the weight of these issues and telling them that they are not alone. It in fact has a number for the sexual assault hotline in the back of the book. I said I read this book, and it educated me on multiple things I hadn't realized were considered to be any of these topics. It showed me that anyone can experience these things, and there's help and support out there for them. Thank you, and I'm glad to be speaking with you all tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Craighead. Holly Cruz.
Hello, Holly Cruz, 3275 Hartsville Pike in Castallion Springs. Good evening, school board members. As always, thank you for this opportunity to come and speak with you all. I'm here tonight to ask you to keep the book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, in our school libraries. This book has been up for review and under challenge for 6 months now. And over the course of those 6 months, I've engaged in many conversations regarding books in my community, and especially those in the school. Online, I've seen people throw insults at each other when discussing such books. I've seen insults in your emails, and I've experienced those insults hurled directly at myself. When books are discussed, it's important to recognize that we all get to make that decision for our own children. Many people are under the assumption that they are protecting children if this book is removed. And I would just like to say that I don't want or need any other parent making that decision for myself as far as what book they should be reading. You see, in my household, books are a constant. For my daughter Hazel, it's given her the ability to travel to the world of wizardry through Harry Potter. It's allowed her to experience historical events such as the Underground Railroad through the Who Was series. It has allowed her the ability to travel into the world of cyborgs in the series The Lunar Chronicles. It's allowed her to see a group of girls protest the school dress code. And it's allowed her to see and relate to the only black girls in town. In terms of the book at hand, I realize that maybe not every student has experienced such lived experiences such as suicide, abortion, date rape, and being in love. However, these books get to offer the ability to read about them and get to give our children and the students in this district the ability to think critically about those experiences and to be able to engage in conversations with their friends and family and form empathy and understanding. As the author Stephen Chbosky said, the theme of this book was to show that people who experience bad things in life can turn those experiences into something beautiful, whether in their own life or in somebody else's. To say that a book containing such tough topics and hard experiences as those in Perks is inappropriate, I ask, what about the students who have lived those experiences? What about those students? They are here in Sumner County. They are walking the hallways of the schools. They are on the sports teams that your children are on, that my children are on. They are here. Historically, book banning is anti-freedom. It is anti-democracy. It is anti-critical thinking. And it does not protect children. I ask you to please keep the book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, on our shelves. And again, as always, I support and appreciate the educators of Sumner County, our librarians. Thank you. My daughters are receiving an amazing education, and I can't wait to watch them continue to flourish here in Sumner County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Bob Brown?
My name is Bob Brown. I'm from 587 Forester Tree Road, Hendersonville, Tennessee. The Supreme Court has characterized in Miller versus California 1973 a test for obscenity. And this book has 44 references of profanity, pornography, obscenity, and should not be in the hands of minors. Even though the American Library Association gave it a glowing report. American Library Association is a communist organization. The president said, I'm a Marxist lesbian. Montana has withdrawn their membership from it. Minors should be able to retain their innocence, not have some callous, immoral mind developed from things like this. Even the DVD does not have the scenes that the book has, because otherwise it would have been rated NC-17. On one page, page 30, there's a rape scene, there is oral sex, to include fellatio. Now, if these are the things that people want their children to read, I feel sorry for you. But I would like my children to try and grow up in a much more moral atmosphere than what this book is trying to portray. This is a very seedy underbelly of society. If this is what people want to aspire to, then I feel sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Julia Garrett, you write like I do, Miss Garrett. I can't write. Hope I got that right.
Hello, my name is Julia Garnett, and I live at 115 Deer Ridge Lane, Hendersonville, Tennessee. I attend Hendersonville High School, and I was on the review committee for the book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I am here tonight not only to advocate for my school's decision to keep the book, but also to reiterate the message that book bans are not the answer, and looking back at history, they have never been the answer. Our review committee determined that this book did not violate the criteria for finding obscenity. Yes, there may be parts that are difficult to read, but this does not mean that this book lacks, quote, any serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. I understand that some parents may not want their children to read this book, and that's okay. But this doesn't mean that one parent, or a small group of parents, should be able to keep all other students from accessing this title. To add my own case, the Supreme Court ruled in Island Trees School District v. Pico, 1982, that, quote, books may not be removed from library shelves just because school officials find ideas in these books offensive, end quote. This means that students have the right to access books on diverse subjects, and just because a school board member or parent finds these ideas offensive doesn't give them the right to remove this book. As a result of small sections of this amazing book, some of you want to take away this resource for students in our county. But this book represents life and real experiences. It embraces pain, it embraces struggle, it embraces imperfection. It's helped me, and it's helped a lot of people over the years. When my close friend growing up told me that they didn't want to live anymore, that they were done with life and there was nothing that I could do to help them, the word hard doesn't begin to even describe that feeling. At 14 years old, I didn't know what to do or to say, but I learned that when someone is struggling, you listen. You embrace their pain and hurt even though it's hard. Stephen wrote in Perks, "It's just hard to see a friend hurt this much, especially when you can't do anything except be there. I just want to make him stop hurting, but I can't. So I just follow him around whenever he wants to show me his world," end quote. And this is true. This book is a healing experience because I have lived that quote. And I'm probably not the only one in this room. And I'm so thankful that my amazing friend is still here. And I couldn't be more inspired by their strength. I'm here for my friend tonight, and I'm here for the students around this county that share my friend's experiences. You can't tell me that high schoolers don't deal with mental health and suicide because I've seen it. I saw it starting in middle school. It's never easy, but it's only harder when we stop talking about it. When you say that a book dealing with mental health has, quote, no literary value because of a few paragraphs, you are only making it more difficult for students to feel like we can talk about what we are experiencing. If you ban this book, you are sending the message to teens in Sumner County that we are not accepted as we are, that our past and our emotions are invalid if they don't fit your ideal narrative. I have known people that wouldn't talk to a guidance counselor, or a therapist, or a parent, but they would read a book. If just one student picks up this book in a school library and believes that the world is better with them in it rather than without, I ask you, isn't it worth it? How could it not be worth it? If you truly care about protecting children, how could you take this away? We cannot ignore the struggle in this world and expect it to go away. I know some of you might think that it should work like this. Like if we all just pretend that everyone is the same, then no one will feel different. But it doesn't work like this. We have to be able to embrace the past and our differences in order to build an equitable future for everyone, not just the supermajority. Because we are all different in a beautiful way, and the world would be so boring if we were all identical. This is why not every book is for every family. And it should be up to individual parents to decide what is right for their child, not anyone else's. I'll end with my favorite quote from Stephen Chbosky. Quote, "So I guess we are who we are for a lot of reasons, and maybe we'll never know most of them. But even if we don't have the power to choose where we come from, we can still choose where we go from there. We can still do things, and we can try to feel okay about them." End quote. This is hope. This is what we need in our libraries. Please vote to keep it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garnett, is that correct? Yeah. I was repeating her name. I haven't called the next person yet. Cole Shepherd is next.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. I'm not going to take very long. I can't say a lot of these things any better than it's already been said, but I'm here to voice my support for keeping Perks of Being a Wallflower on the shelves. It's been there for years, and we haven't had this issue. This issue only came up recently, partly because what's been passed around among a lot of the websites around locally is a review by a site called BookLooks, which is a Moms for Liberty kind of far into the internet group of people who, you know, don't like anything that kind of makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable. But this book has gotten awards and accolades from professional educators, mental health professionals for years now. I think the book absolutely stands on its own in that regard. And I find it a little interesting now, since communism's been brought up in the room, I served for 6 years in a communist country. And you know who bans books? I saw it. I lived it. So I just want to leave that for everyone. It's not the American Library Association that are communist. And Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I support that book.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Joanna Daniels.
Good evening, Joanna Daniels, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Wanted to come up here and talk about perks of being a wallflower. So I was in AP English, and I read a lot in high school, and was actually I started off with a reading disorder, and then was able to overcome that and became, you know, amazing at reading. And so one of the things about a good book is a good author makes you feel like you're there. They generate emotions. They make you feel like you're there with them, with the characters. They're experiencing what those characters are experiencing. They generate emotions inside of you. They bring out emotions inside of you. Well, let me tell you, as a victim of sexual abuse, Perks of a Wallflower would have sent me into an amazing tizzy if I had read that in high school. It would have absolutely allowed me and created a traumatic response to me if I was in high school reading that. You know, there's a difference between offensive and differing opinions than pornographic and abusive writing that causes someone to experience abuse, something that they may never have to experience, or something that they may have experienced, and you're making them relive that. Perks of a Wallflower is not appropriate in high school. It is not appropriate for minors. It is something that does not teach a person how to read. It does not add to reading or learning how to read. As a matter of fact, what I read in there could cause trauma to the brain, could cause trauma. And, you know, according to, I'm going to read this, exposure to traumatic experience may lead to psychological conditions, with one of these disorders being post-traumatic stress disorder, an anxiety disorder that affects many survivors of trauma. 3 to 15% of girls and 1 in 6% of boys who have a traumatic experience in their life develop PTSD, according to National Center for PTSD. Not one person that I know of has ever used a library book to get them through a trauma? Now, you need social workers, right, in our schools to help. Well, if we're just going to put these books in there and just say, hey, you know what? These books help kids. Well, then stop spending money on social workers. Let's just put all the books in there. Let them read their way through their trauma. Now, that's ridiculous, isn't it? It absolutely is ridiculous. These books don't add to learning. These books are not teaching children how to read. We have a reading comprehension problem. Trauma, it is shown in many statistics, and you can look them up. Trauma inhibits reading. Trauma inhibits learning. So if we put a book on the shelf that if they're a good author, that author is going to make that child feel like they're getting raped. They're going to make that child feel as though they're actually in that scene with that character. I don't want any child to experience that while they're in a school. There is no reason for any book to be on a shelf to cause any child to be triggered at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Megan Brennig.
Good evening, Megan Brennig, 171 Wimbrook Trace, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak with you this evening. I have a very important statistic for you to remember tonight. 1 in 5. 1 in 5 students, 1 in 5 children will be sexually assaulted or abused by the time they turn 18. This is not a small statistic. 1 in 5 is a huge number. If we were to take a look at the population of our Sumner County schools, we'd be looking at roughly 6,000 students who were sexually assaulted before they left the schools, before they even come into the schools in some cases. Knowing that it's that large of a number, if we think about our students, that means that not only do we have that large percentage who have been through these experiences, the majority of the students in this school will either have been sexually assaulted or know someone well who has been sexually assaulted. This is not a topic that they are ignorant of. This is not a topic that they have not been exposed to. These students are experiencing this, and far too often, because we are uncomfortable with the topic, they never have someone to talk to about it. They never hear that they are not alone. They never know how to talk to their friends. They don't know how to support their friends who have been through this, because we are uncomfortable with this topic. Our children watch us shove these stories under a rug. They watch us run and hide when things make us squirm or make us uncomfortable, and they think that they make us uncomfortable, that their experiences are what we are afraid of. And it creates a system where the majority of students don't have a safe place to go. On the other hand, we can tell our students, you are safe with us. You can come to us. We know these things happen, and we are a safe place to talk. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is an award-winning book that tackles this topic of sexual abuse in a way that can help us and our students process these tragedies. From date rape to abuse from a loved one, Perks helps the reader in processing these uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. These are not gratuitous descriptions and incidents. They're not arousing. They are not salacious. They are hard, sad situations that children experience far too often. I read Perks for the first time after this book was challenged because I wanted to find out what was so objectionable. What I found was a powerfully moving story about the experience of grief and loss, and how important friendships can make all the difference. As you decide tonight to uphold the school review committee's decisions, I'd also like you to consider a critical aspect of the age-appropriate law. We are to consider the oldest students in the school, not just the youngest. That means we're talking about 18 and 19-year-old seniors when we're talking about high school. These are not minors, as one board member referred to them to me in an email. This board member stated specifically that some of the scenes were removed from the movie so that it could be rated PG-13, but if they had remained, that it would be rated X. I find that to be a very extreme interpretation. A movie version with the scenes included would likely have been rated R, which is still for 17 and up. Again, looking at juniors and seniors in our schools. Additionally, there is a big difference between a book and a movie. Someone who is very smart, my mama, taught me that children's brains can only imagine something as scary as what they have experienced. So in reading something challenging, they only get as scared as their own imagination. On the other hand, when you put something scary in front of them on a screen, you immediately expand their idea of scary to someone else's imagination. It's why books are never as scary as the movie version of a book. I believe that principle applies here as well. It is very different reading about someone's experience than it is to watch that same experience. To be fair, this book probably isn't for every student, just like the majority of books in the library aren't for everyone. But as we've heard repeatedly here, and as I've said in front of you many times, we have a beautiful policy and a process to allow parents to opt out of books they don't want their children to have access to. So again, parents who don't want this book in their students' hands can talk to their school, but don't take this book away from all students because of a few small minds that are wanting us to live in a nanny state. One of the difficult tasks you as board members have is to rise above your personal feelings and do what is right for everyone. I propose that in this case, the right thing to do is to keep the books in the libraries.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Jesse McKinney. Excuse me.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jessie McKinney, and I live at 209 Waterview Drive. I'm here tonight as a parent of 2 Hendersonville High School students, and I'm asking you to uphold the book review committee's findings and keep the perks of being a wallflower in the school libraries. I want to remind you that this book is in the library. It's not part of the curriculum. No student will be required to read this book. If a student has had a past traumatic experience, they don't have to read this book. As a parent, if you know that this book is not appropriate for your child, you now have the ability to let the librarian know, and your child will not be able to access it through the school library. This was challenged in February. We've been talking, July, 5 months now. This has given parents plenty of time to recognize that this book has been challenged, to look into it and decide if it's appropriate for their child or not. So as a parent of Hendersonville High School students where this book was challenged, I ask that you uphold the book reconsideration committee's findings. This book belongs on the shelves in the library. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Karis Richardson.
My name is Karis Richardson, and my address is 155 Bright Star Court. I am a upcoming senior at Liberty Creek High School, and I can say that The Perks of Being a Wallflower encapsulates what a lot of current young adult books are missing: mental health representation specifically for teenagers. As a teenage girl that has struggled with mental health and is an avid reader, I can say that this book has made me and several of my friends feel seen in a way that other books haven't. It perfectly shows how emotional well-being for people my age can quickly and deeply range from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. It helped me realize that this spectrum of emotion is normal and, although hard, can be persevered through with the support from close family and friends. The Perks of Being a Wallflower belongs in high school so all students can have access to a book that aids them in their mental health journeys and promotes community through hardship. Please vote to keep this book in Sumner County School. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Tracy Parker.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Parker. I live in Gallatin, and I'm entering my 25th year in the school library. I can't really say much better than what's already been said, but I did want to point out a couple things. As the lady right before me said, these are library books. These are not books that the students are required to read in any way. And I tell my kids all the time, if it's not your flavor, get something else, because not everything is going to be to their liking for a variety of reasons. We have in Sumner County a large selection in our libraries, and I'm very grateful for that. And so the kids have a lot of choices about what they could read. So if it's not their flavor, it's not their flavor. We also, as Sumner County librarians, deeply respect the parents of our students and their parenting and what they choose or don't choose for their kids to experience, not just in the school library, but in a variety of ways. And we are incredibly respectful when a parent says to me or any of my colleagues, I really don't want my kid reading this series or that series. I don't think they're ready, or I don't really care for that content. We are respectful of that as much as we can possibly be. But as you know, because you're parents, if they want to do something or read something or see something, they're pretty good at figuring that out. This book is not in elementary schools. It was only in a very few middle schools at the time of the challenge, and 4 high schools, I believe. 3 of those schools voted to keep it, only 1 did not. And I do think that it speaks to a lot of really tough experiences that our students go through, not just at high school, but in middle school as well. And it is incredibly helpful for kids to see other people who have struggled in a way that is similar to them, and that those people came through, that this was not the end. As we know from teen suicide, they often pick a very permanent answer to a temporary situation. And I do think this book, based on the reviews that I read and the students that I have talked to and listened to, has done that truly. But it does talk about some hard, uncomfortable things for me in the bubble that I live in. But that doesn't make it not valid for other people. And it also helps me to appreciate my bubble and what other people may have experienced and gone through. It really does create a sense of empathy in that way. I would hope that you would uphold the school's decision in each of the cases of this book. Again, students are not required to read this. It's not pushed at them. It's not promoted to them. Kids find books all the time, and kids who don't come into the library very often don't often find many books at all. They miss it completely. But I would really encourage you to do this. I think we have a good relationship with our parents and our buildings, and I don't think it's necessary to make decisions for other people's kids. I have the right to decide what my kids can do. I don't have the right to decide what your kids can or not do. That's not my lane. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Charlena Allmiller.
Hi, I'm Charlena Allmiller. I live at 143 Roland Circle, Hendersonville, Tennessee 37075. And I'm here to speak about, to request for perks to stay into the high schools. I believe that it gives a really accurate glimpse of the seedy underbelly of high school. Whenever it talks about sexual assault, mental health issues, getting into a relationship out of peer pressure, the adverse response to drugs, suicide, death of peers, and transition of friends. And it deromanticizes alcohol. I went to high school during the same setting as this book, and I wish I had read it before I went to high school. I had very little parental supervision, and I would have benefited from reading this book. I believe I would have been more prepared for some of the social situations had I read it. I have 2 daughters, and I can understand the hesitation about it, but my girls are still young, and whether I like it or not, they will grow up, and I want them to be prepared. Risky situations. I didn't read much in high school. I went to parties a lot. And throughout my high school tenure, alcohol, drugs, tobacco were readily available. Sexual assault was a norm. And with all of that in the environment, of course, mental health issues were a problem for many. After I went to college, one of my friends from high school, we went to the same college, and he committed suicide. My kids are still young, but I still tell them not to smoke because I wanted to stick with them. We tell young kids to not talk to strangers, but if a stranger has candy, kids may not see them as a danger. We have to tell them all different ways how to identify danger. That doesn't change when they go to high school. I grew up when freshmen were called fresh meat, and that's a pretty accurate description of it. I can tell my kids about sexual assault and rape and drugs and how to be true to oneself. There's only so much I can say that they will understand by my telling them. I think they will learn to identify, they will learn more to identify dangers by reading this book, which is why I intend to have my daughters read it before their freshman year and then again before their sophomore year. I was glad to hear from some of the kids from the school to know that this book is still relevant because they're still reading it anyway. I've heard that 1 in 5 sexual assaults exist, but I believe that number to be low because so many sexual assaults do not actually get reported and kids are just dealing with it with their friends. This book can help prevent trauma. It helped me work through some of my several traumas from childhood. I joined the numerous parents of kids in schools and the kids who are here to please keep perks in high school libraries to help them protect themselves when the parents can't be there with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. That concludes the hearing of delegations. Next item on the agenda is matters involving council. We do have executive session, so the board will be in recess until further notice. Call the meeting back to order. The next item on the agenda is report from the director. Director Langford.
All right, so somewhere, somebody I'm sure will text Dr. Phillips and let him know that I'm more verbose than he is during director's reports. I'll just go ahead and apologize for that up front. But I did want to share some things, and I also want in our meetings, I want to be able to share some of the great things that are going on in our departments. So, you know, we're going to try to really bring up some principal teams and school teams and kids because we've got so many wonderful, positive things going on in the county, and we want to share that. And, you know, sometimes we all look and say, oh no, this is going to be a 2-hour, 3-hour meeting. But the reason everybody here, I believe, ran for the school board or is here tonight is because they have deep love for the kids of Sumner County. And so we want to celebrate that and try to catch and recognize as many as we can. And also the great work that are going on in our departments. You know, I know Mr. Lancaster's mentioned being an accountant before. Ms. Brown will frequently tell you that accountants never get the respect and love that they deserve for the work that they do, but that without her, no one gets paid. And no bills get paid. So, you know, we won't hear from Ms. Brown tonight, but we will in the future hear some of the news and things that are going on. I wanted to run through a couple of updates. First, I'd like to thank the County Commission for passing our budget. We had 14 positive votes, and our budget passed, which meant that on July 1st, we were able to begin capital spending. We were able to begin raises for year-round employees, teachers, and other employees will receive their raises in their August check. And probably the thing that's got the most attention, I'll be honest, the other morning, Ms. Keisha Ray reached out to me and said that Walmart had put out school supply lists that were so old they still had Jeff Cordell's name on it. You know, Jeff is older than the sidewalk, so and y'all please share that with him. That'll make me happy. But anyway, parents were going in and buying school supplies. So I shared it out I put a post on Facebook, and thank you. I think almost everybody on the board that's on Facebook shared that. We had over 1,100 shares of that. Channel 2 reached out to us, to Miss Kelly Flood, and so I did a Zoom interview with them this morning. And so I think if you want to get up sometime between 4 and 7 a.m. tomorrow, it'll be playing right during prime time. But it is exciting that they're honoring us, and that's the work that this school board's done with Miss Jamie York, with Andy Brown, with Amanda Brown, with our team. To be able to provide those school supplies. Just so you know, we began that in 2020 because we wanted to come back to school normal. We knew that 9 weeks of shutdown was enough, and we wanted to get back to normal. One of the things, many of our families had been displaced, had lost jobs, their hours had been reduced, and we were able to use ESSER money to fund those school supplies, and that's been a huge benefit for our schools and for our parents and for our kids, and so it's really a great thing to celebrate. So I wanted to share that. It's not on the bottom there, but I thought about it as we started the meeting, but I would encourage everybody to continue sharing that because, you know, we do want parents to know that their kids are going to walk in the first day of kindergarten, 8th grade, and all the school supplies will be there. So if you can continue to share that, that would be great. I wanted to share with you our new principals. Our principals have changed a lot over the course of the summer. We got into, I think, the last week of May, and we had 2 principal positions, and now we have 8 new principals. Dr. Jesse Adams is the new principal at T.W. Hunter Middle School. Dr. Lynn Hall is the new principal at Guild Elementary School. Ms. Lauren Mayberry is our newest principal, announced last week. She's the principal at J.W. Wiseman. Dr. Mel Sawyers at Hendersonville High School. Dr. Josh Shelton at Venus Stewart Elementary School. Thomas Spears at Howard Elementary School. Jonathan Thurman going home to Bethpage Elementary School. And then Ms. Jamie Warren moving from our EL department, leading our EL department, to Walton Ferry Elementary School. So I would encourage you, there is nothing more exciting and more wonderful, while at the same time more terrifying, than being a first-year principal. So if you get a chance, I would encourage you to reach out to those new principals in your district and make contact with them. It'll mean a lot to them. I also thought that it would be fair to just share what kind of my focus areas are going to be. Obviously, Dr. Phillips and I worked together for a long time, and we share many things in common. But just like I've probably said more words tonight already than Dr. Phillips said in 12 years of director's reports. I don't expect that to change. I did not put talking down as one of my focus areas. But gratitude, I'm deeply thankful each day for the team that we have, the work our teams do, and the students we're entrusted to serve. We really do have phenomenal leaders, phenomenal teachers, phenomenal students, and I want to be more focused on taking time every day or whenever I have the chance to praise and express my gratitude for those teachers and students and their families. I got to catch up on the clicker, sorry. Visible. I plan to be present in schools, at events, talking to parents and students. I'm going to try to hit, Frankie Skinner and I had coffee with every principal over the course of June and early July. I plan on going to every school in August. I hope to be able to complete that in August, if not the first week of September. But I have a pretty aggressive plan to be able to be in every school. And really what my plan is to just go around and thank our teachers for the work that they're doing and just ask if they have any feedback or anything that we can do better. I've got a Friday night schedule. Mr. Gregory, I wore a purple shirt up to be on the radio last week, and it only mildly singed my skin. So I'm going to try to. I've got a plan to hit every Sumner County team this year. What's that? I felt better when I took it off, Mr. Gregory. I'm like, oh. But after I got 200 texts telling me I was disowned from White House. But not just football. You know, we have a lot of wonderful events and activities going on in Sumner County. Marching band, chorus, theater, volleyball, girls soccer in the fall, volleyball, cross country. You know, I plan to be out and about in the fall. And if you have any events that you'd like for me to attend, if you'll just shoot me a text. My calendar is filling up, but I plan to hit as much as I can. An advocate. I plan to advocate for our schools, our principals, our teachers, our students, our school district, our parents, our families. I think that somewhere along the way, in the madness that's been the last couple of years, our society has gotten off track and has bent towards more of living on social media, living on reality television. I think everybody has been guilty of it. I know I have been. We fire off something on Facebook before we fully think about the ramifications. So, you know, one of the things that I want to do is talk about relentless positivity and kindness. Everywhere I've spoken so far this spring, at Rotaries and Chambers of Commerce, I've tried to drive that message home that we're going to do the right thing and we're going to celebrate. And then I'm going to really emphasize with our students this year, with our principals, everybody, that we need to start by being positive and kind to everybody that we encounter. And we need to hold each other accountable to that. Also, when we talk about advocacy, I want to talk a little bit because over the course of the last year, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with our librarians. I had a lot of time to spend. I mean, I think one of the positives that's come out of the last year is, and this is not a positive confession on my part as Chief Academic Officer, but I've really not spent a tremendous amount of time with librarians over the previous 5 years. They were very gracious to forgive me of that fact. They might have brought it up once or twice in conversation, but they were very gracious. But really, like I think that we have to, as a school board, as a community, as me as a leader, I believe that there are a number of different things that we have to balance, and I want to run through some of those. I don't want to go too deeply into it in my report tonight, but I do want to share my heart about what I truly believe about the educators of Sumner County. And I'm speaking as one that, you know, about 4 generations of my family, counting my daughters, have been Sumner County educators, and it means a lot to me, and it's meant a lot to my family over the decades. I 100% believe that parents have the right to determine what their children read and are exposed to. 100%. Every parent should be able to determine what their children read and what they're exposed to. I can remember as a young AP, my daughter was, when she was in 7th grade, I remember the first time I dealt with a naked picture on a phone. And my daughter had just gotten a cell phone, and I lectured her the entire way home. Do not take a picture. And she said, Dad, I don't even text boys. You know, but we do live in a time where I think every parent is deeply concerned about what their kids are exposed to. We want our children to be children. We want them to have a childhood. And I think we all as a community need to be deeply committed in every way that we can to protect and nurture our children. 110%. And I think as a district, we've done a great job of doing that. Every library book, every classroom library book, every curricular material that we use is available for review online. You can see every one of them. Community members and teachers scanned 11,113 titles in classroom libraries this spring. That's 17,619 books. We have hundreds of thousands of books online in our library catalogs. We encourage every parent to have a conversation with principals, with teachers, and librarians. Our librarians, teachers, and principals would love to have parents come in and talk to them about what their kids are learning. We want that desperately. Parents have the opportunity to opt out of curriculum, to opt out of lessons. They have parental choice on library books. I think one of the things that was most encouraging for me meeting with our librarians last year was just to get a feel for the work that they do to truly put the right book in every child's hands. They work tirelessly to do that, and I think they do a tremendous job. Our teachers, librarians, and principals, 99% of the time will be able to reach an agreement with a parent. If our parents are not satisfied, they can appeal to the school, then to the school board, and then to the State Textbook Commission. I think our school board did an admirable job of wrestling for 4, 5, 6 months, pulling in other districts' perspectives, pulling in our librarians' perspectives, pulling in our board perspectives. I think y'all did a tremendous job of putting together a review policy for us to use. And I look forward to us using it tonight for the first time, because I do believe thoroughly and completely in democracy. Sometimes we have to come together as a community and make tough decisions and speak our hearts, speak our conscience, and vote. And I'm excited for that process tonight. The advocacy part that I want to get into tonight is I comprehensively do not believe that there is indoctrination in Sumner County schools. If there is something that's wrong, if you will bring it to my attention, to your child's principal's attention, to your child's teacher, we will do everything in our power to address it. We will not allow our children to be indoctrinated. And I wholeheartedly believe that our teachers, principals do the very best job that they can every day to ensure that our kids receive a wonderful education. Over the next 2 weeks, every principal will work in excess of 70, 80, 90 hours a week to get school started. Teachers will. They will pour their hearts into our kids. And I think, when I go around and travel and talk to principals, the things that's disheartening to them is they feel that things are thrown up on social media. They're called names. It's very unfair. They don't feel that they can respond, and they feel like they're taking a public beating, and it's disheartening. I will be completely transparent. I will work with anybody to benefit our kids. I am 100% for our kids, for our parents, for our families, and for our schools. But I will stand up and advocate for our schools, our principals, our teachers, our students, and our school district, because I think it's a vital part of my job. And I think that together we have worked well to put together a process and a system that provides protection for our students while recognizing and appreciating the great diversity across Sumner County. From Hendersonville to Westmoreland is very different. From White House to Gallatin is very different. We have people moving here from all over the country with different values and different expectations of schools, and we want to respect and appreciate that diversity and develop means as a school board and as a school system to handle challenges, to handle conflict, and to work together to be responsible. And I think that we can do that, and I think that we can do it positively, and I think we can do it compassionately, and I think we can do it in a way that shines bright light on Sumner County. Support. We will work together, my staff will work together to support our school board and our schools. One of the things that I would like to do, I apologize for not doing this sooner. I realize saying that I've only been director about 18 days, but my heart would be to sit down with everybody and have coffee or lunch, each school board member, and just talk. I guarantee you if we talk about, we're not going to all agree on everything. We never have. Anybody I've ever been on, whether it was a church board, that's probably where I've had the least consensus. When I was on the county commission or on the school board, we're never always going to agree, but I think that we can always respect each other and respect the process. And I would love to just have the opportunity to sit down with each of you and talk so we can identify those areas where we can work together. Because on August 1st, we will have 30,000 students enter our schools. And that's a sacred calling and an awesome responsibility. When I first had the privilege to supervise transportation, when you do instruction, when you're a principal, you think you know about everything in a school district. When you see what our bus drivers do every day, it's unbelievable. We drive the equivalent of 3 round trips to Los Angeles every day. And they do that every morning starting about 5:30. It's unbelievable the work that they do. And they get our kids safely to school. And we feed our kids. Our SROs, if you notice, they were ranked as one of the tops in the nation. And our SROs each day, when you watch the horrifying things in Covenant and around the country, and you see the job that our SROs do each day, I am thankful for y'all. I really am. It's amazing the responsibility that we have, and I want to support you, and I want to support our schools to do the very best we can. Focus. One of the things that we I think I've shared this with everybody I've spoken to. One of the greatest advantages of me moving from director from instruction is that Ms. Skinner is way more attentive to details than I am, and she will really help us get the focus. One of the things I'm really excited about is going through, over the past couple of years, we've had to do 1,000 things. We built a virtual school in about 3 or 4 weeks. Ms. Hessen shot like 6,000 videos, and we've planned that out in the course of about a month. We've done some amazing things, but in the course of that, we've also taken on a whole lot of things, and now we're at a time, as we go back to more normalcy, now we're at a time to really drill down and identify what was most important. I don't want to step on some of our later presentations, but what I'm really excited about is that as heavy-handed as I think the 3rd grade literacy law was, the positive aspect of it is that we looked at pre-K through 2nd grade through 3rd grade literacy in ways we never have and have emphasized it. We saw big growth there, and that was the product of focus. And we want to take the lessons that we learned there and apply it across pre-K through 12th grade to make sure that that focus is there so that we're doing the very best for our kids. Communicate. This is really where I was going to talk about having coffee with y'all, but I jumped ahead of myself. I got kind of fired up on support. We're committed to streamlining and reducing communications. We're like every other organization. If you work in the business world, we've got 9, 10 different departments. We've got 52 schools. We have a lot of moving parts. And it is very easy, if you're a principal, to get 9 actionable emails on Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and you want to pull your hair out. That's the #1 piece of feedback that we've received from principals this summer. We are working hard to streamline processes, to improve communications, to lift burdens off principals. We did a lot of work back at our Summer Leadership Conference in June to talk about moonshots. President Kennedy said in 1962, without even an iota of an understanding of how to do it, he said, within the next decade, we're going to put a man on the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And we took on as one of our moonshots to create 8 additional hours a week for our principals, streamlining processes, adding staff, adding support, doing whatever we could to lift about 8 hours of burden off of our principals so that they could focus on developing moonshots at their schools to innovate and create for our kids. I told them I had promised it today. I had to tell them today, they didn't make it to the moon in a month. But we did get to about 2.5, 3 hours, and our goal is to hit it 4 hours by August and keep adding from there. So we're going to continue to work to improve communication, to streamline communication, to reduce it, and also part of that is for me to be able to get together with y'all and just have coffee and talk and find out some ways where I can support you in your work as a school board member. And then innovate. I believe we're one of the most innovative school systems in the country. We routinely push the envelope. If you travel around our schools and look at our CTE programs, look at our STEM programs, they're state of the art and they're cutting edge. I've got one of my good friends from when I went to West Point has accepted the aviation job at Liberty Creek. He's a retired lieutenant colonel. He's a Black Hawk pilot. And when he came in and saw the simulators at Liberty Creek, he was sold. He wanted to come here, and he's going to be around our kids, and he's a great role model. We'll have more kids go to service academies because Kyle Perry's coming here to teach aviation. One of our classmates is being sworn in on Thursday as the new Commanding General of the 101st Airborne. We're going up to celebrate that on Thursday morning, and Kai's already said, I wonder if Brett can get us a Black Hawk to fly down so the kids of Sumner County can see a Black Hawk. And I'm all over that. I hope that happens. I don't know if that's feasible, but 2-star generals have a lot of power. I want us to continue to innovate as a board, as schools do. We've always pushed the envelope and done the very best for our kids, and we've done it creatively, and we've done it consistently, and I want us to continue that process. My asks. I ask that we commit to work together and work through problems constructively. We may not always agree, but let's work to do our very best. Mr. Wise, what does your TV screen say over there?
Mine says for the children.
Yeah. That children, sometimes it's 30,000, sometimes it's 1. When we look at, y'all, I wish I had the video to queue up for you. I've decided now that I'm going to let Wade do every intro for every speech I ever give. He's really hard to follow, but he spoke to our principals today, and he shared with them the impact that Sumner County Schools had on his life. And he went through every principal and every teacher and every cafeteria staff person, every bus driver, and personally thanked each of them. It's one of the most powerful things you'll experience. And that's the, those are the ones that are on my heart in addition to all 30,000. All right, working together and then dreaming big. It's our task to dream big and to push hard for our students. I'm going to transition now to our different departments. I think Mr. Ott is going to share with you some updates about human resources. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to give a big shout out for the Human Resources Department over the last summer months, I guess, because we have really knocked it out of the park this year to make sure that we have as many teachers hired and support staff hired for our schools for the opening day. And while you'll see some open positions here, we are working still very diligently with all of the principals and other staff here in the central office to make sure that we get these positions filled in a timely manner before school starts. So let's just go over job embedded new hires. Right now you can see the progression here. It's about 30% each year. We've added to that. Once we get our EPP up and rolling starting this Saturday, you'll see that number climb even higher. So right now, job embedded teachers in our schools are at 63, and then we'll add a number of CTE teachers. I think it's 14 on top of that also. So that number is coming up. Without this job embedded program and our new EPP program that we're starting here at Sumner County Schools, we would still have a lot of vacancies that we couldn't fill. So just so you know. New hires, we've hired over 229 teachers right now. We've hired 63 rehires for the school system. We've transferred over 285 people around the school district, so a lot of school-to-school transfers. And under House Bill 2783, which is for retirees to come back to the school system, we've got 28 teachers that are going to take part of that. That is more than what we had last year take part of this. And we keep wanting to build on that program. Of course, that's a 3-year program right now, so hopefully they'll up that in the legislature moving forward. We still have 74 open positions, and we still have 13 interim positions. So as people go out on FMLA leave or other leaves, we have to have interims fill those jobs. So that's the stat for certificated employees right now. On classified employees, we've got some opportunities. As you can see, we've only hired 38 people. We've got 11 rehires, 110 transfers from building to building. House bill only covers bus drivers for classified employees. So that House bill covers teachers and bus drivers only right now. And we only have 2 people taking part of that. So out of all the people that retired as a bus driver, only 2 people have come back. Right, Andrew? Yeah, most of them stayed. Yeah, which is good. Which leaves us with 174 positions open. Now, that is a lot, and we know that. But we also have a lot of employees who are picking up additional jobs in our schools, right? So some of those positions may be filled with other current staff members. We have some teachers that are working in the cafeteria or as a custodian. We have a principal currently who is going to be a bus driver. As an AP, last year he was a bus driver. So we have people that are willing to step up and take on additional opportunities in our schools because they know that we have those opportunities and we need people. So that's a blessing. On the substitutes, we really have knocked that out of the park. We have over 781 substitutes, so we should never go without substitutes right now and if a position is open, because we have a lot of people. We've hired over 352 of those just this summer. Questions?
Mr. Lancaster.
Oh, yes, sir. House Bill 2783, you said it was a 3-year program. Is it a 3-year program, or when we hire these retired teachers, they have 3 years that they can work on, or is that both?
So each and every year they have to sign up to be under House Bill 2783, but it was a bill that was passed for 3 years. So.
Okay. And
Yeah.
once we rehire a retiree, is there a time limit for them, or is it
It's on a year-to-year contract.
It's on a year-to-year?
Yep.
Okay.
And we're in the second year of that bill.
Okay. Because when that was passed, my fear when that was passed is we were kind of kicking the can down the road, so to speak, where we would, not we were, but the state was, and that's one thing that I would like to.
Honestly, I hope that they re-up it, but they also
Right.
include more positions under it.
When is that current 3-year? So was it last year?
I believe
this
it's,
year?
It's one more year.
Yeah, it's one more year.
After this year.
Yeah, so it expires next June.
Thank you.
I think that they will extend that because, I mean, the staff, it's great for our employees because they draw their teacher salary and then they draw 70% of their pension. So normally if they retired, they'd be drawing 100% of their pension. So it's beneficial for the state to have more people in it. It really helps them, and it keeps it, it keeps our most experienced teachers working, and it's great for them.
And my understanding is that we're still paying in on TCRS on those individuals too.
Yeah. Like I say, my concern was, teachers would take advantage of it,
Right.
retire early, retire.
Yeah.
Retire early, and then that goes away, and then we're like left without that position and
Yeah.
without the ability for the research.
Yeah, and I think just to highlight something else that Mr. Ott mentioned, this job embedded is going to be a big part of the future of education. I think colleges of education just don't have the numbers of students enrolled to be teachers, and I think we're going to have to. They've already started. We're going to go to colleges and just recruit kids with undergraduate majors, and then we'll teach them. With our EPP program, we've got the ability to be able to teach them how to teach, and it'll open up our pool to be able to recruit across the nation, across the state, but not just limited to. We still want students from colleges of education, but there just isn't the volume to replace the numbers.
Especially in difficult to fill positions such as math and science and foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
So we can also include those in our EPP program after we get, some momentum built up. But we're starting with CTE first. Special ed too.
Yeah.
Right, Norma?
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Ott.
you.
All right, Ms. Skinner.
I'm excited to share some highlights with you all that we've worked on over this summer. If you want to follow along with the highlights I'm going to share, that I handed you this document out at the beginning of the meeting. But first, I want to introduce you to some new team members to the instruction department. They're right behind me, so as I call their name, if you'll wave so they can put a face to a name. But we added Dr. Chris Causey to our team. He is the new high school supervisor and data and accountability. He previously served as the director of schools in Robertson County, so we're excited to have him join us. Dr. Eric Bowman is also joining us as the supervisor of federal programs, and he previously served as the principal at T.W. Hunter. And then Dr. Sabrina McClard is going to be our supervisor of leadership and coaching, and she previously served as a principal at J.W. Wiseman. So we're excited about the perspective that they're going to bring and the expertise in their areas and in the previous roles that they served, so they can help us support our schools at a really high level. So we're really excited to have them join us. Apple updates. So managed Apple IDs for teachers and students are all ready for use. So those are ready to go. So as soon as iPads are deployed, those are queued up. Technology coaches and librarians have been trained. That happened last week at Liberty Creek. Gene Hessen led that training. And then deployment plans are being made right now by leadership teams. So how are we going to get these to schools, and how are we going to get them in the hands of students? Summer Scholars, this is a really big celebration for us. So if you look at the students that registered, we had 2,867 students that registered. 2,198 were in regular attendance, which was a bigger number than last year, so we're excited about that. 631 of those students were third graders. So on the bottom, I know we talked a lot about adequate growth. So there was a pre and post test that students had to take in Summer Scholars. So 5th grade students made a 9.4 increase from the pre-test to the post-test. That's huge growth. But our 3rd graders are really shining right here with the 13.4% growth. And I will attribute that to we had to hire reading interventionists as part of the requirement for the grant. But our district went above and beyond and hired an extra reading interventionist for 3rd grade only because of the retention law. And so that work that they did with those students really shining right here, this 13.4 increase that we're super proud of. And then again, with the 3rd graders, they had a 98% attendance rate, and they were required at 90% to count towards being retained or not. So really high attendance. Our site leads provided 3 additional days for makeup days, and then one of our site leads even stayed on a Saturday to help 2 kids. So that was above and beyond as well. So our teachers, they love these kids. Want to do everything to help them. On the next page, we had Governor Lee visit Howard Elementary in the Summer Scholars Program. So it was a really fun day. Miss Hawkins was there with us, so she got to be there that day. One of my favorite things about that day was one of the 3rd graders said that Governor Lee asked if there were any questions, and a 3rd grader said, well, what is it that you actually do all day? and Governor Lee was like, that is a great question. So it was really fun. But he visited STEM in the gym. He participated, we're doing those activities with kids. He spoke to 3rd graders, and then he went into a foundational literacy classroom and talked to kids. And he's really good about getting down on their level and asking questions and letting them interact with him. So it was a really fun time. And then the next page are some new guidance around how to get to 4th grade. So they changed a lot of the wording from and to or, and or. So the bottom numbers, we had a 96% success rate for appeals. That's really high. We're really happy about that. I'm going to go to the inbox for a second, and then I'll come back to the middle. But the Summer Scholars retention, that .07 is really targeting the students who scored a 1. So if they scored a 1 and they did not attend 90% of Summer Scholars, they have to do tutoring. And so that's only 5 kids. So out of that 631, that is 5 students. And that's just a testament to the hard work of our people. I mean, district-wide, so we're talking about kids maybe who did not attend Summer Scholars. We don't have all the data in yet, but we've projected less than 20 kids across the district. I think it's probably going to hover over 12 if our numbers are accurate, but we'll have a tighter number once all that data is in. So super proud of the program, super proud of our teachers.
Mr. Lancaster.
Real quick, so the .07, if the student scored a 1, you said?
So on that graphic,
I may have heard that wrong.
The graphic that's right above there, if you look at the orange, it says students who scored a 1, they can retest and get proficient, or, so it's not and anymore, it's or, students maintain a 90% attendance rate at Summer Scholars and do tutoring for next year. So we had 5 students who did not meet the 90% attendance requirement that scored a 1.
Okay. So if they scored a 1, and does that not mean, and they didn't do the 90%, does that mean they have to go to 3rd grade again? Isn't that right? Is that what we're saying?
They could do tutoring.
I thought if you scored a 1, you had to do both.
Yes. Well, now it says or, so we're getting clarification around that.
Oh, okay.
But if you didn't attend 90% of the program, you have to do tutoring.
Okay. I guess that part's new, I guess, for what I understand. Because I thought if you scored a 2, you had to do either or.
Right.
If you scored a 1, you had to do both. That's why I was confused.
We had some loose ors and ands.
Yes, the ors and ands are the tricky part there, and they took away the adequate growth piece if you attended 90% of the summer
program. So
programming.
if you attended 90%, that was going to be my other question. You didn't have to.
So if you scored a 1, you attended 90%, you agree to tutoring, you can go to fourth grade. If you did not attend 90%, you are retained. That is 5 of our students from the Summer Scholars Program.
So 5 were retained, will be, okay.
Correct.
And one of the real positives is we had our site leads worked extra Fridays, and that helped. That gave 3 days, so we had some kids that were able to make up days that they missed, and so
And
they
the
were able to get
Saturday,
that.
so.
Yeah,
But
they were able to.
There was no, at one point, the way we, I think, understood the law is you had to show adequate growth, but that's not in it.
According to this recent graph,
Okay.
that is correct.
All right.
New commissioner.
Which
Oh,
we're
I mean,
thankful, but our
I missed one meeting and the whole thing changed. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Right.
We don't know where you were, Mr. Lincoln, but everything changed while you were gone.
I was like, okay. Now, I guess one other question, since we're on third grade, and that's just, everybody's all crazy about third grade. Do we have enough tutors that we think how many students do we think are going to have to do tutoring, and is that going to be, how have we got that worked out?
We're waiting on guidance from the state on what tutoring looks like.
Oh, well, we start next week, or 2 weeks, so I guess we're good.
Yes.
All right. Thank
So,
you very much.
so I think the question will have to be, the biggest question, like I had a parent email me last night. I think the biggest question on the tutoring piece is that we're trying to get an answer for is, can we run it during the day? Because we have some kids that don't have the ability to be tutored unless we can do it during the day. We're building a plan to be able to tutor during the day because obviously we can't wait until
We're
the
hopeful
state
that
gets
during
around.
that RTI time that we can also have the students being served in the appropriate numbers with the tutor.
Like I say, just from the last update we had, it's completely changed. a
The
little bit.
overall district number is amazing. Like, we weren't sure what the impact was going to be for our district, and so we're super thrilled.
Mr. Graham.
Thank you. Great job. I mean, y'all had vinegar poured it into a Mr. Coffee and made taster's choice, so I appreciate that. On the 96% appeal success rate, how many appeals were there, and then how many did we assist with?
I don't have that number, but I can get that number for you.
I appreciate that.
We weren't allowed to assist this year.
Okay, so
So-
I thought we were sending out the form and we're going to guide them through it.
We sent through and we guided, but next year we'll be able to actually file the appeal for parents if they request. This year, the assistance was our principals and teams made about 14 million phone calls and reminds and everything else. And
Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Next on the list.
all right, Safe Schools, Ms. Brown.
Good evening. I don't have a handout for you tonight, but I did want to give you some highlights of some progress that we've made. I know we had a conversation previously in a closed session, and I can't give you a lot of details here in this meeting, but we will have future conversations with many more details. But we had a big kickoff principals meeting today, and I shared some things with the principals that I think were very compelling about our physical building safety and our procedures. That Sumner County does a really good job. We have award-winning SROs. We have met almost all of the requirements of the governor's new safety bill even before those things were signed into law, and so those procedurally were how we were operating. We did receive notice of our school security grant allocation. That is almost $1.2 million. And so I will be coming to you soon with plans for those funds. It involves a lot of the projects that we have spoken about, and so I'll be coming to you with more information about that. A couple of the things that I think my focus points for this year, two of them aren't new. It's safe students in secure buildings. The third one is competent staff. I want all of our teachers, all of our bus drivers, our cafeteria, our office staff, I want everyone to know what to do to make themselves safe and the people that they're with, whether that's other children, other staff, whatever it is. I want everybody to know what they can do to secure their personal space, their classroom, their bus, their office space, how they can secure that space and keep the people in it, the children, safe with them as well. And so we reviewed some of that today, showed some reviews from other incidences where we can learn and improve on things that have happened in other school districts. And one of the things is that our SROs, we did this a few years ago, but we're going to revisit it again, are going to go into every classroom and have a conversation with each teacher in their own space so that they know where the safe places are in their classroom. Because it varies. If the threat is on the inside of the building, this corner might be a safe space. If it's on the outside of the building, this other place might be the safe space. And so they're going to go to each classroom so that each teacher knows this is how I secure my space. This is a secondary evacuation route. This is how I should respond if I need to make a change in our placement. So I'm really excited about that, bringing confidence to everybody. The new law did have 2 additional drills. Those are a bus evacuation drill and an incident command drill. Both of those are going to be tabletop drills as far as I know right now, which means they won't involve students. They will be as a part of a meeting with our first responders, which we already hold twice a year. We have an emergency operations plan review where we bring in our community first responders, and for our lockdown drills, they are involved in that as well. And so those drills will be conducted as a part of that conversation. They'll be given scenarios, and then they'll work through them. So one might be a bus, you know, like, okay, you're having an accident, there's a creek on the bed, and there's a curve in the road, and you can't get traffic through, and what are you going to do? And so they're going to think through that and problem solve that with the first responders from their community as well. The incident command drill, I don't know if you're familiar with incident command, but that's the language that all of our first responders use when they're responding to a large-scale incident. It's a means of communication. It's a hierarchy for tasks and responsibilities. It's a way to be clean and organized when you have a lot of people responding to an incident. And so our first responders already use that. This is going to bring our staff really upping our game so that we can be an active participant in the response that's happening. Our principals are equipped with radios where they can communicate with first responders, and they have live access to camera systems, which is good information for first responders to have. So if you've looked at any other large-scale incidences, communication is often the breakdown. And so this is going to be a place where we're going to up our skills so that we can participate better with our first responders. So that's something I'm trained in, but I'm really excited for our building level folks to have that common language with the first responders and know how that they can participate in that response. Let's see. I'm picking what I can say and what I can't. So, so we're just trying to equip every teacher with the knowledge that they need to do, the knowledge that they need to have to keep spaces safe, and kind of assessing all of those vulnerabilities that we found during our security assessments in the spring and using those funds to address all of those little pieces. So I'll have more information on all of that next month.
When we go and do, talking about with like the teachers and staff and so forth, will we also be including substitutes? I feel like that is a big concern that I've heard from substitutes, is that they'll go into different buildings, and so they may not know. They may, if there's a building that they go to routinely, they may understand what happens in that building, but they may, one day sub in another building. They want to be confident in those classrooms as well. So will we be including our substitutes
yes,
in those
we will.
trainings?
We absolutely will. We'll also be standardizing some of the things across the district. There are some things that are building specific just because they have to be. The buildings are physically different, they're in different locations, and they have different resources. But there are things that we can standardize across the building so that everybody who moves from building to building to building knows what's going to happen in that building. But yes, also they are going to be better equipped with how to respond, having keys, things like that, so that they can also secure the space.
Will we also be uniforming language within those buildings, just as far as like Sumner County Schools, what we use, for instance, some of our high schools have skinny block, and some people called it, different things. And so you would talk to somebody and you would say, hey, it's during their, whatever it's called, stampede time or whatever. And they're like, what? Because it wasn't consistent across the district as far as what that time was. And then you tell them, we call it this. So will there be common language across our buildings that say, hey, if it's like if you're at Walmart and there's a code Adam, everybody knows or most parents know what a code Adam is. It means there's a missing child, and if y'all don't know that, if you're in a place and there's a code Adam, there's a missing child.
Well, we have that type of language
Yes,
with them.
we do not use codes. We use plain language.
Okay.
Fire alarm is fire alarm. Lockdown is lockdown. So we don't use any codes so that any adult, anybody, any child in the building knows what that means. And so those are standard
They know
across.
if it's interior, exterior threat type of, without saying maybe it's interior, exterior, or.
We could say interior, exterior. There's no reason to keep secrets. If something's happening, there's no reason to be secretive about it. Everybody needs to know where the threat is. And that's not, so there's been questions about, the lockdown alarm is going off. The intruder hears it. Well, yeah, we want them to know. We know they're there and people are coming. So in those incidences, there's no reason to use codes. There's no reason to try to be subversive about something. We do have some things that are hidden, but they're not in a code, and they're not necessarily something that we would share publicly anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question and then a topic. Are you getting, throughout the county, are you getting good participation and good involvement with all of the emergency first responders, all of those units that we should be getting?
Yes, sir. We have excellent response. White House is a little bit tricky because they cross the county line, but we absolutely have good response from White House PD, and the EMS across the county are involved. We do several countywide conversations, whether that's a public safety roundtable or countywide drills, and everybody participates.
Okay, thank you. Very good. You touched on it. And it concerned me several years ago when I found out that I think the city of White House uses Robertson County Emergency 911. What impact does that have on Sumner County and schools in Sumner County, in White House? Can you explain that?
Do you want me to take that, Ms. Brown?
Well, I mean, I can, but I'm not sure that that's appropriate to explain right now. I don't want to explain a potential vulnerability. We are addressing issues because they are in a different radio channel. And so the radio advancement has been really strong in Sumner County, and Robertson, it has not been as much. They're not on the same channel system and same trunking system as us, so we are trying to overcome that in our notifications. We do have to program that specifically for White House to notify White House authorities.
Does that slow down the...
I can't speak to that. I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, we just have to make sure that it's hitting the right radio.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any slowdown in response.
Mr. Wise, the only I mean, this is old because I haven't been a principal since 2018, but the only time we ever really hit a problem was when we first went to the 911 system. They had some things coded in improperly, so like they had if you said White House Middle School, they would go to what we call the White House High School Annex because it was the old middle school. We had some issues, but they fixed those relatively quickly. And I'm trying to think back, so 2018, whenever we called for an ambulance, it was pretty fast. It wasn't really a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Lancaster?
Ms. Brown, just wanted to, I know last year we had an SRO every building, and I know that will be a question we'll get asked. Day one, do we have somebody at every school?
We have a position in every single school. I don't have an update on what our current staffing situation is because that's not, they work for the sheriff's office, but as far as promotions go, I do know that there are some officers who may have been promoted, but I also know that we have officers that attended our conference, the training this summer, preparing to go into the buildings. It may be that they are in process in training in other buildings for the first couple of weeks because they do some field training, and then we'll be in a building, but I can't speak to that specifically because I do know that there were some promotions and some changes of position, but I know that we have new officers on board to fill positions.
Okay. And Mr. Lancaster, I believe that Sheriff Weatherford is asking with the grant that's coming through for SROs, he's asking for, I believe, 12 additional SROs to be able to have some floaters and multiples on different campuses.
That was going to be that was the second part of my question. Is I know last year if somebody was out, we could we could handle one person being out, but like once two were out, then
Right.
we were kind of.
They do have a proposal, and that's obviously outside of our hands, but they did, we signed an MOU with them to support the funding that the state has provided, and I think that funding is for existing officers, it's for one per building, but they have asked the county to expand for 12 additional positions, which would allow us to have 2 officers in a high school, which would then also allow us to have cover if an officer had to be out.
Okay. I guess if y'all don't mind, as soon as you know, because that's a question we get, or at least I get a lot, is like, do we have somebody at every building? You know, and the legit question. And,
absolutely.
You know, and I know with school starting back, that'll be one of the first things we get, and I just want to be able to say yes, and that be the truthful answer, or whatever. Yeah.
Thank you. I know you know it, and we have, what, 52 schools now? But we have, I know, 2 high schools that have 2 buildings. And yes, I noticed the way Mr. Lancaster expressed his question, do we have an SRO in every school? Yes, we have an SRO in every school. However, we may not have an SRO in every building because Beach has 2, White House has 2. I'm a little more concerned about White House than I am Beach, but anyway, that's okay. But just kidding on that before it gets out. So the 12, I think that the sheriff is asking for new ones. I'm assuming before we put 2 at, for example, and I'm just going to throw out example. Well, let me pick on my friend over here at Portland. Before we put 2 at Portland High School, we are going to put 1 in the annex at White House and 1 in the annex at Beach. I'm assuming.
That is a decision made by the sheriff. And I think that they intend to put 2 in all of the high schools, and their placement of them would be that. I would think logically that might be a priority, but I can't speak to that. I don't set the placement for officers.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Lacy?
You mentioned that it's going to the county commission. Do we know when that would be brought before the county commission for discussion?
I believe it's started the process. You might want to, I would guess probably Mr. Brown can help maybe after the meeting. But sorry, Mr. Brown, not to single you out, but seeing a commissioner here. I don't know if he's on the committee, but I know that it started, from what I've heard, the sheriff has started the process. The grant is very, very early. It's just really started coming out. So
I would love to watch it, maybe be part of a meeting, because I know we need more. I would like to have more.
Yeah.
So if you could keep us informed.
Absolutely, yeah, because I think too, I mean, you know, we can't speak for the sheriff, and Sheriff Weatherford has done a tremendous job of deploying our SROs to protect our kids, but I think the idea of having 2 and then working on some floaters around campuses and things would be wonderful.
Mr. Lacy? Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Brown.
All right, and Mr. Grasty with the world's fastest transportation update.
Good evening, Chairman Brewer, members of the board. Dr. Langford asked me to do a quick update for transportation. I get excited every time I get to talk about the great work our transportation family is doing. I'm going to cover 2 quick things this afternoon or this evening: bus driver staffing and routes being posted for the new school year. If you remember back, recall in August 22, we started the school year short 54 drivers in Sumner County. I, along with my leadership team and office staff, we were driving buses every day while managing operations so that we could get our students in the county to school every day, not canceling any bus routes during that time. I'm so thankful, and I'm very happy to report to you all that at a time that it's unprecedented and to recruit and onboard CDL certified school bus drivers, we have hired approximately 30 school bus drivers in Sumner County in this last school year. 10 have been tested and certified and licensed bus drivers in this summer alone. Our transportation area supervisors have worked diligently in recruiting and training our new bus drivers, and they've done an amazing job. We're most certainly moving in the right direction to staff our bus driver vacancies. My team and I are truly thankful for the board's support of our bus driver salary increase this last fiscal year. It is very much apparent that it has helped us recruit and retain our school bus drivers here in Sumner County. Our office staff, mechanics, bus attendants, and drivers have worked so hard over the summer attending the first aid and safety training, staff in service for next week, and all to prepare for another safe school year transporting our Sumner County children. While we've operated approximately 60 buses on our roads throughout Sumner County for summer scholars, the mechanics have worked hard to prepare 227 buses, and the routing team has reviewed over 700 or more individual routes for the new school year. Those bus routes are scheduled to go live for public viewing this Friday night, July 21st. The link to access those bus routes will be posted on the landing page for the Sumner County Schools Transportation Department. It's easy to find on there. We ask that families begin to check over the coming weekend to see their child's bus stop information is available. And if it's not there, then give us a call. We'll be happy to help take care and make sure the safety and the children be present at their bus stop 5 to 10 minutes prior to the bus's scheduled arrival time. That way when the buses are coming down the road, they can see the students waiting at the safe location. Remember, we have a wonderful GPS tracking service that the district provides on all of our school buses. It's called Here Comes the Bus. I did give you that handout quickly. We met with all the building principals this morning in the principal meetings, and each principal got a copy of that. It's on their social media. We'll probably have Kelly put that out. It's a great tool that we subscribe to. You can track your school bus to the bus stop in the afternoon as well. We put messages out from transportation if the bus is running behind for any reason. So it's a good communication part for us. Looking forward to a great, safe, and exciting school year. So thank you all for your support in the transportation department.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. And that was, I'm sorry, Mr. Brown jumped in there. Sorry.
Yeah. Can you tell me when the Here Come the Bus app will go live? I feel like it's typically lags a couple of days from the start of the school year, and so there's always people who are like, hey, when does this happen?
That's been a vendor issue in the past, and we're trying to get ahead of that this year. So they have to take our routes, 700-something routes, and mesh them after we publish them. Luckily, we're going to have them this weekend, have all the routes up. We're going to talk to our vendor next week, make sure that's all resolved, because the most important time for us to have that is the first day of school.
Yes. So are we hoping that it will be be functioning and well on the first day of school?
Well, it should be. Yeah.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for that.
Yeah.
That is a big
That's
deal
a
to
big
parents.
tool for us and helps the parents. Cuts down on our calls for our staff so they can focus on the bus drivers and you can see where the bus is. So
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Andrew. Mr. King?
Yeah, I'm just curious, how many open positions for drivers are there, right?
So, obviously retention is a big part of what we have.
Yeah.
We've through retirement and nutrition. We've lost a few, even in the last couple of days, and in the summer they've decided. So we've got about 20 positions open.
Okay.
But that's way better than 54 that we had. So.
And then another question, and I had asked you about this before, and I'm just curious. Some of these drivers don't need the benefit package of health insurance and things like that. Are they getting a stipend on that? If they don't need the benefits, do they get a pay increase? Do they get some payment for that?
So our HR team, the finance and benefits team, will really be able to address that specifically. The district offers a shared savings after the first year. If they have the benefits for the whole first year and they elect not to take it, and that's a reward to them for not taking those benefits, then they do get a shared expense. HR and I'm sorry, benefits can explain that better. Right.
Okay. I'll get with them.
That's great. Yeah.
Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 15 years ago, and this is the one thing I have not yet done that I said I was going to do, I'm going to ride a school bus.
Please do, yeah.
I'm going to ride a school bus because I know what it's like to drive from here to Cottontown with two little ones in the back seat of my car. I cannot imagine what it's like with, 40, 50?
56. 56 or so. Mm-hmm. The capacity is 84 on a school bus seat 3 to a seat. We don't do that, so
and
56
try
kids.
To manage in this traffic.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to thank you for the job that you do, and would you please give the message to your bus drivers and your team, all of your team, your managers and all that we very, very much appreciate every one of them.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll pass that along to them. I'll see them Thursday morning. They likewise appreciate your support. I mean, that means the world to them, knowing that they're backed, they're supported, because they're doing a hard job. So we're all up. I was thinking, Dr. Langford, when you said the news at 4 a.m., that's the best way to see the news at 4 a.m. is be a school bus driver. So.
Mr. Wise, Mr. Lacy?
Oh, yeah. Actually, during our last board meeting, I got to go to the 4-H camp. We had 3 or 4 buses. I got to meet the bus drivers. Very nice folks. Did a professional job. And the one thing that I thought was pretty cool is, we drove 3 or 4 buses down there. Well, they left 3 buses there and they all rode back in one bus. And I was like, well, they're saving money. That's awesome.
Diesel feels expensive.
Absolutely. And I just thought that was a real smart deal. And like I said, y'all do a great job.
It's a great team. Like you said, the transportation family as a whole, we spearhead things, but it's what they do every day is amazing. So, yeah.
He was also trying to recruit drivers. You probably put the sign on the side of the bus.
Yeah. Yep.
And some of the other schools that came, they had like big advertisements on the side of the buses. That we need to do that to make some money.
That's right.
Yeah. Ms. Lacy? All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, just to wrap up, Mr. Brewer, while we were talking, some of the questions that came up, we've had 353 approved appeals for third graders. I left off, I've looked at this list 175 times. Miss Shannon Lyles is the new principal at Burris Elementary. So, Miss Lyles, if you're watching at home, I'm sorry. And then after a long process, Merrill Hyde parking lot on Thursday will officially be out for bid. It will be on your August agenda, and if we approve it, we will plan on paving the Merrill Hyde parking lot. Mr. Frank said that he sent as many thanks as there are holes in his parking lot. So.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding reconsideration request appeal for library book Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. Is there a motion?
I move that we accept the committee's recommendation and that the book retains in our high school libraries.
Motion been made. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Hawkins. Discussion.
I challenge this book. I think everybody knows this.
Turn your light on, Mr. Lacy.
My apologies. Sorry. Okay. I challenge this book. I know the information that was given to the schools. Me and Dr. Langford had this discussion by email Sunday. It was partial information to the Tennessee law. When I challenged this book, I used Tennessee Code 3917-911, and that mirrors word for word, verbatim to our school board policy. Why did we not use school board policy for, let's see, it's 4.40012, and we have that available right here in our policies if you'd like to look at it. Why did we not use board policy and Tennessee law to determine whether this book was obscene or not? What you used, we actually sent out a document, and it didn't reference any law. It was pieces of a law. I believe it was Tennessee Code 3917-901. Is that correct, Dr. Presnell? You pulled parts of that law out and sent it to the different schools to determine obscenity, which equals, I guess what you pulled out equaled the Miller test.
Mr. Lacy, I was asked to prepare a document summarizing the definition of obscenity.
Okay.
And so that's what I did from section 901, subsection 10.
Okay. And then, I mean, whose ultimate responsibility was it to provide the information to the schools of what to use to evaluate the book? Is that ultimately yours, Dr. Langford?
So we provided the challenge materials that we've used on every book challenge because this challenge, because you referenced obscenity. We asked Mr. Presnell to provide guidance on obscenity. So basically what the review committees did was look at obscenity and age appropriateness.
Right, but like I said, I challenged this under our board policy and Tennessee law, and they didn't use any of it. Why do we have an obscene policy in our policy manual, and they didn't use it to determine obscenity?
I would disagree, Mr. Lacy. I think they did.
They did.
Well, hang on, let me finish. They did go through the book review process, and they used, Mr. Presnell can speak to this probably better than I can, but they used court's definition of obscenity to determine if it was obscene.
But you told me by email that they only used this document that you provided that references no school board policy, it references no state law, it's partial to a state law, and this is the only thing they used to judge whether that book was obscene or not.
No, I must have misunderstood your email. I thought you were asking what did we give strictly for obscenity. So they also had, if you look at the reviews from each of the schools, they also had the review packet that we've used on all of our book reviews. So they went through that process. Some of the committees asked for guidance on how to define obscenity. Because if you remember, part of what we were deciding when we were determining our policy was to determine the difference between age appropriateness and obscenity and what stays on the shelf and what doesn't. And that's what, so this study was done prior to the adoption of our current policy, but I think that they really did both. They looked at the age appropriateness in the packet, if you look at the individual schools' packets, plus the guidance that Mr. Presnell gave.
Like Westmoreland High School, I guess the review committee said that the clarity of the task was difficult to ascertain. Said that there was basically that the guidance provided did not provide guidance. I would think it's very important that when they're doing a book review, we would follow board policy. I'm looking at our board policy 4.40012, and it says any book, pamphlet, magazine, printed material, however reproduced, or sound recording which contains any matter mentioned in section 1 or which contains explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, excess violence, or sadomasochistic abuse, and which is harmful to minors. If they would have used this school board policy, would they have changed their mind?
They could have used school board policy. They could have used everything that was supplied to them. They could have also asked questions if they had a question. We had 6 reviews. 5 completed it according to the packet, and only 1 raised the issue. So, we received they had voted and submitted the challenge request, then asking, there was no question to me or my department about clarity. So I can't speak to what the Westmoreland team wanted or didn't want. I can only tell you that, they just submitted with a vote what the school had decided.
Because like I said, by your email, you verified that this piece of document here, where did it go? Right here is the only thing that they used to determine whether this policy was valid or not. I mean, basically, this is the only thing used. You said this was the only thing used to determine obscenity.
For obscenity, yes, because they asked for guidelines for what obscenity was, which Mr. Presnell provided.
So what does our board policy provide? It says it is unlawful for any person knowingly to sell or loan for monetary consideration or otherwise exhibited or make available to a minor.
Right. They already had the board policy. My take was they were already looking at board policy and asked for clarification for how to, school librarians, teachers, principals, parents are not constitutional lawyers, and they asked for guidance on how to interpret obscenity. So in my mind, they would have had state law, they would have had board policy. All of that could have been looked at, also could have asked if they had questions. And just like when we had committees that asked for a definition of obscenity, Mr. Presnell, if we had before they voted, if anybody had reached out for further clarification on what to use or how to use it, we would have been happy to have provided it.
Like I said, by email, I asked you, please send me all that you sent out that they used to judge whether this book was obscene or not.
I believe what you asked me was what did I send from Mr. Presnell about obscenity, and that's what I supplied. If you had asked what I sent, I could have sent you the entire packet that we sent them.
Right. Like our board policy, I find it our board policy does not mention any Tennessee code or law. I think our board policy needs to be reviewed. Do we follow Tennessee law? I believe we do. This law is a spitting image of Tennessee Code 3917-911. Would it be good to reference that law? Mr. Presnell, would you think that'd be a good idea?
I suggest that this board, at some point in the future, take this up at a study session now that we have the Age Appropriate Materials Act, because that act seems to subsume any kind of obscene material by definition. This policy, as you reference, is a verbatim. It's verbatim of a criminal statute. That's within the same section of statutes where I obtained the obscenity definition. So, if that's your suggestion, I'm in agreement with that to look at this down the road.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Lacey, I think the issue that I think we all had with this is that basically that policy, just as Mr. Presnell said, it just restates the obscenity law. It doesn't really give any guidance for what to do. So it just says here's the obscenity law, but it leaves librarians and schools doing a review or principals doing a review. It doesn't really give them like we now have a very thorough age appropriate practice and policy to guide what we do. We probably do need to do the same thing for obscenity. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lexi. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to have to read this out loud, and I don't know if there's minors in the room. But, you know, to hear several speakers say things are read or posted for shock value, it wouldn't be shocking, or wouldn't have shock value if it wasn't shocking. So, I mean, here's page 30 of the book. And believe it or not, I didn't technically read the book. I got it on audiobooks, and I listened to it while cutting the grass. So, disclaimer there. But I have researched the book. I've read the book. It is a nice little story. I grew up an introvert. You know, I didn't know, before I read the book, I didn't know what a wallflower was. I know what it is. I think I was a wallflower growing up. I was that guy who could just sit down on the bench and watch people and observe, and no one would ever pay any attention. I get all that. But the problem is no matter how good this book is, I think it does violate our policy. I think it does violate policy 4.40012, which, as Mr. Presnell just said, is based on criminal code. And here's why. And you can't say it's taken out of context, because I'm not taking one word out of context. I'm not taking a sentence out of context. This is an actual passage, word for word. And here we go. And the boy kept working up the girl's shirt, and as much as she said no, he kept working it. After a few minutes, she stopped protesting, and he pulled her shirt off, and she had a white bra on with lace. I honestly don't know what to do by this point. Pretty soon, he took off her bra, and he started to kiss her breast. And then he put his hand down her pants, and she started...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
Why?
Yep.
Mr. Wise?
I'm calling point of order on you, sir.
I don't. You can call whatever you want to. Look,
State your point.
we've received. I'm getting there. We've received a minimum of 20 emails. Every board member, I'm sure, has received at least 20 emails. And if not 20, 19, all of them said the very same thing that he's trying to read. And he's trying to read it for the shock factor. We don't need it. We know what it says. We've read it in 20 doggone emails. We know what it says. I would appreciate not hearing it again. Let's vote on the subject and be done.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Point is well taken. However, we're talking about reading this, children reading it. So I'm going to allow Mr. Graham to continue. But
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think they were both very drunk. He reached to take off her pants, but she started crying really hard, so he reached for his own. He pulled his pants and underwear down to his knees. Please, Dave, no. But the boy just talked soft to her about how good she looked and the things like that. And she grabbed his penis with her hands and started moving it. I wish I could describe this a little more nicely without using words like penis, but that's the way it was. After a few minutes, the boy pushed the girl's head down and she started to kiss his penis. She was still crying. Finally, she stopped crying because he put his penis in her mouth. And I don't think you can cry in that position. I had to stop watching at that point because I started to feel sick. But it kept going. And they kept doing other things. And she kept saying no. Even when I covered my ears, I could still hear her say that. Now,
I hope you feel better now.
I don't think you knew that text was in there. Not one email we received had that.
Mr. Wise, Mr. Graham has the floor.
So the point I'm going to make, if Mr. Wise will allow me, is that any book, pamphlet, magazine, printed matter, however reproduced, or sound recording which contains any matter mentioned in Section 1, or which contains explicit and detailed verbiage verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, etc., and is harmful to minors. If we vote to keep this book in our libraries, we are saying that we don't believe that a text which graphically describes, it doesn't just mention, it doesn't allude to, it doesn't say something happened behind a closed door and we all kind of know what it is. It graphically describes in detail to the point that it will transport anyone reading it to that room to see it in their own imagination. If we say that, then we're saying, A, we don't think that that is a sexual description, and B, we don't think it's harmful to minors. And I know this book has won awards for young adults. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology defines a young adult as someone 18 to 25, which in harmful to minors would mean that this is not for young adults. This is for adults. A minor is anyone under the age of 18. It is for that reason that I think that we should not uphold the committee's recommendation and we should remove the book. Now, I'm not against people reading the book. I say we donate it to the Sumner County Public Libraries. And I'll say this too. If there are any students in Sumner County schools that are age 18 or 19 that desperately need access to this book and we're not going to have it in our library and they can't make it to our public libraries, I will purchase a copy for them out of my own pocket and make sure they get a copy. But it is not right for a community-funded school system to promote this to minors. Not only is it not right, it's illegal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Gregory.
We have band in our schools, but nobody's forced to take it. We have about 20 different athletic programs in our schools. No one is forced to take it. We have great cafeteria staff, but nobody's forced to eat. We have great libraries, and no student is forced to take a book and read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. King.
Just on that note, and I'll get to this later. Just, are there not to be any restrictions at all? I mean, is this a free for all when we're talking about material in our libraries? It just sounds like that. I'm hearing that there should be any book without restriction and without any rules on content, and the only way a student could be prohibited from accessing it is if the parent contacts the librarian and makes an inquiry and says that I don't want my child having after they've perused thousands of books in the library, they make a list and they say, here's the list of books I don't want my child to read. So my question, and I think it's a valid question, what restrictions should there be in regards to library materials and in regards to sexually explicit content? I can't think of anybody that would say there should be no restrictions. I mean, even folks that are supporting this book, I can't believe that level of insanity, so that someone of high intellect would really believe that there should be just absolutely no restrictions on sexual content in our schools for minors. So that's the big question, and I think we need to have that discussion as a board. You know, Dr. Langford, can you repeat what you said in your opening remarks about parents and books? By any chance, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I said that parents 100% should have control over what their kids are exposed to and what they read.
Okay, I agree with that. But at some level, do we have a say in terms of what material gets to be restricted? Like, you know, does the board get a say, or does, you know, what restrictions should there be?
I think that's what we're determining tonight.
Okay,
We had a committee review, and now the school board's reviewing.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the process we're in.
I'll come back to that question, and I think it is a valid question. I just it can't be a free for all. Anything goes. I mean, am I wrong? I see some people smiling. Am I wrong? I don't know.
Please direct your please direct.
Just any kind of book, any kind of material that without discrimination. Okay, so that's what I mean. So I've got some questions for our board attorney, if Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. I'd like on subject, absolutely. So I want to ask a little bit more about this Miller test, because that is what was given to, basically what was given to the committees, the criteria that they used to determine obscenity. And the Miller test was a Supreme Court case out of 1973 where they basically determined a three-pronged criteria, right? And that's what I have a copy of what was given to the committees and to determine obscenity. And well, first of all, was the Miller test ever intended to be used to determine materials in school libraries?
No, Mr. King, I did not use any Supreme Court case for this. This document came from Tennessee law and Tennessee.
Right, but that three-pronged criteria, that was the Miller test, and we've codified it in Tennessee law. So
I've not compared that statute to the Miller test. I can certainly do that and give you an opinion on that. But,
okay, I mean,
but this came straight from the statute.
Right, and it's my understanding, when you look at it, when you look at the statute, it's 39-17-901, section 10. It is the Miller test as the Supreme Court established it. And so obscene means, and this is one, the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. Prurient interest means a shameful or morbid interest in sex. Second prong, the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct. Sexual conduct means a whole host of things, including anal, oral, intercourse, fellatio, cunnilingus, sodomy. Just some of the terms that is defined as sexual conduct. The third prong is that the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And in the research I've done on this, and that is the Miller test, by the way, that sets the bar almost impassable. That sets the bar so high for determining obscenity. In fact, I was reading some research on it that suggests that there are legal scholars that question whether some pornography would even pass this test or fail this test. Because of that last prong, it says the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. You know, and so just hypothetically speaking, when we think about that, hypothetically speaking, if a Playboy were to be found in our school libraries, this rubric that was given to these committees, this Miller test, this rubric would keep it on the shelves.
I would
Because-
disagree with that, Mr. King. I think if you go through the test that you've outlined, and I'd let Mr. Presnell jump in here, the Playboy would fail feels directly and is marketed towards the prurient interest. It's without would not meet community standards, I think, in our community, and it would lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So I think that just from my perspective, the analogy to a Playboy is not really connected to what we're talking about here, where we're talking about perks of being a wallflower.
But this Miller test is actually, it's intended to determine obscenity for adults. That's my point. There's another part of our statute that deals with obscenity for minors. And that was not given to the committees. That was not in Mr. Presnell's document that he gave. And our policy actually makes reference to that part of the statute when it uses the phrase harmful to minors. And what we've done here is we have evaluated a book based on criteria that is intended to determine obscenity for adults when we should have evaluated the criteria for harmful to minors.
And I would disagree, because I think by the very nature of their jobs, our principals, teachers, librarians, and parents on the committee, their number one priority was to make sure that nothing was done that was harmful to minors.
I mean, I understand that, but I'm just talking about just the nuts and bolts of this. And by the way, you're interrupting me, and
Point of order, is he talking to the lawyer or to a doctor?
it's okay. I'm just saying that technically you've got to get permission from the chair.
Okay, Mr. Brewer,
So-
I request permission to respond to Mr. King.
So moved.
Okay. I think Mr. King and I defer to Mr. Presnell.
I'm not sure that you're allowed to interrupt me. I think you have to wait until I'm finished, and then you can get permission. So.
All right, if that makes you happy, go ahead.
Okay. So, my point is the statute definition that deals with minors, it reads, it's also a three-pronged criteria. It's sort of a modified Miller test, but it's worded differently, and it says, number one, the criteria would be found by the average person applying community standards. Contemporary community standards would appeal predominantly to the prurient, shameful, or morbid interests of minors. Number two, is patently offensive to the prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what is suitable for minors. Now that phrase is totally different than the obscenity prong for the second prong for the Miller test, determining obscenity for adults. And finally, it says, taken as a whole, it lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific values for minors. Okay, so my question is, why was this not given out as part of, it seems like we evaluated this book based on criteria to determine what is obscene for adults versus what is obscene for minors, because that part B, that second prong, it's patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what is suitable for minors. I think that's a dramatic change. That is a dramatic difference from the Miller test. So I'm just questioning, why was this not part of the criteria? And I did speak to several people who were on these committees, and they were very confused. They were confused, and some of them actually thought that this what was sent out, this Miller test for determining obscenity for adults, was the only criteria that they could use. So why was this other not sent out?
Who are you directing your question to?
To Mr. Presnell, our board attorney.
So I was asked to provide a definition of obscenity, which I took from the Tennessee Code. Not in relation to this particular book is my memory, and that there are two sort of two evaluating standards. One is it obscene? If so, the book could be removed immediately without even this board's vote because of the policy. But then secondly, for anything that doesn't fall within this high level obscenity definition, then it's the Age Appropriate Act standard that applies. And so the committee should be evaluating these books based on both of those standards. So it could be something less than obscene, but still be removed by this board under the Age Appropriate Materials Act.
Okay. Well, there's been some confusion, and then I understand the wires get crossed between obscenity and age appropriate, the Age Appropriate Act. Okay, so that's all the questions I have.
Mr. King, Mr. Lacy?
Like I said, I'm going to finish. This will be my final statements. Like I said, my original email when I challenged this book, I said I would like to bring, and Mr. Presnell mentioned that it should be removed immediately by policy. I assume you're referring to our board policy.
Yes.
I said I would like to bring this book to the board to be removed immediately. This book violates TCA 3917-911 and violates our own board policy 4.40012 for obscene materials. And like I said, I don't know the committee chair at Westmoreland High School, but it's our job to enforce board policy. It's our job. That's what we were elected to do. But like I said, the guidance provided in point 2, if you want to look at Westmoreland High School's review, it says the guidance provided did not provide guidance. That's pretty important, isn't it? Like I said, I don't know this committee chair. The guidance did not provide guidance. Additionally, it did not mirror school board policy. So did they use our policy to do this? I don't know. They don't think so. Nor Tennessee Code Annotated, TCA 3917-901, and then 902, and then 1003 were examined to help the committee at Westmoreland answer the questions on the worksheet. So that's what I'm asking you guys. Did they use scoreboard policy? It's our job to uphold school board policy. Thank you so much.
Mr. Lacy, Mr. Graham?
I have a question. Either one of you jump in. I don't know which one of you to really ask it to. When Lawn Boy was removed without going through the formal review process with the committee, it was removed immediately because it was considered obscene. What's the difference in this verbiage? Like, why did Lawn Boy rise to that level in the verbiage in this book not? This is a genuine question. I'm not trying to score points. This is not shock value. It just, oral sex is in both of them, and I thought that was kind of the thing that got Lawn Boy immediately removed from our shelves. So if y'all could, either one of you, give me some clarification, I appreciate it.
Dr. Langford, I may need some help on my memory on this. My memory was they pulled it from the shelves. It was challenged for obscenity, but the school committee assessed it under the Age Appropriate Materials Act, sort of that process. Mm-hmm. They removed the books during that time period. That's my memory.
So it did go to school-based committees?
It went through the committees,
okay.
Yeah, and they voted under age appropriate. That's what my memory, that's what I remember. But I do think that, I think the positive of the work that we did in the spring is we have a much cleaner process. And I do think that we have some work to do on giving guidance about obscenity. But I think that our age appropriate policy that we worked on in the spring is solid.
All right. Mr. Lancaster.
I think that what Mr. Graham said kind of is where I was when I started reading, this book and reviewing things. Is I didn't understand, how we removed Lawn Boy without coming to the board or whatever, but this one, remained in, and you're basically looking at similar sexual situations in a book, and actually, to a certain extent, this one is worse in the fact that it's forced and rape versus in Lawn Boy it would seem to be consensual from the snippet that was shared with us here. I guess the other concern going forward that I have in all these reviews is basically we have somewhat laid out that any challenge has to be either up or down for the entire school. So for high school, it has to be, you know, all grade levels, all everything. I know someone mentioned that one of the book reviews is, you know, some crazy extreme person, but the one I looked at was Common Sense Media, which I'm fairly certain is not a extreme right wing or political. It's supposed to be nonpartisan. I do think their recommendation was that this book was 16 and older, and so that's where I have a hard time wrestling with is, okay, book's supposed to be, you know, they recommend 16 and over, but I can't, you know, we've been told we can't say, oh, this is for a certain grade levels or age levels at a school, and we've been told that, you know, we can't, you know, before Ms. Brown made mention at one point when we were talking about, I think, Lawn Boy back several months ago, that, you know, about a mature reading shelf or mature, you know, where you had to get parental guidance. And I know that Wilson County, I believe, has that, because I see their stuff on the news where it's like, oh, they, you know, recommend that the book go to the mature section of the library. And we've gotten emails from librarians saying, no, you can't do that either, because that's, you know, that's the same as banning it, you know. So it's really, it comes back to the point, you know, I believe somebody made mention that you've got to consider the oldest person in a school, but you also have to consider the youngest person in a school. So when we were looking at books earlier in the year, you had to consider a kindergarten reader. With this one, you had to have to consider a freshman reading it, which is, you know, 14 to 15 years old reading this book. And for a lot of them, that they're probably, you know, okay with that. But then you got to say that you're okay with all of them reading it to a certain extent. And we had a librarian that responded in support of keeping the book in the library, who said that she was a middle school librarian and she would not have this in her middle school library ever. So then that leads me to, like, well, what happens between that 8th grade and 9th grade year that all of a sudden this book is okay? And then you factor in the fact that we had one school, you know, we get attacked. I know you get attacked on both sides of these issues, and I'm not, it's nobody, I think, likes doing this. I might be wrong, but, you know, I've heard some of our people that spoke in favor, like, well, you know, you don't care for kids if you're voting to remove this, and that's the furthest thing possible from the truth. It's a hard decision to make, and I'll agree with Westmoreland. It says they start out, this was an extremely difficult task. I mean, that's basically what it is you're trying to, you know, say, is this okay for kids of all high school ages? And when you look at, like I say, the different national organization that has reviewed the book and said, hey, it's 16 plus, that's where I struggle with it. And I think that's probably where a lot of people in the community struggle with it is, you know, and it, you know, when I first read it, or when I first told somebody, like, hey, we're reviewing this, they were like, well, have you not seen the movie? The movie's PG-13. And I'm like, okay. And somebody even made mention it, you know, that if this movie was, and what I found odd is I watched the movie after reading the book. That's kind of the opposite of the way I used to do things. But the author of the book also wrote and directed the movie, which is kind of unique, but it's also interesting from the standpoint of what they chose to keep out of the book, out of the movie, to get it a certain rating. So then you're like, okay, well, why did you do that? If the MPAA rating board would say, okay, if you put this rape scene in here, if you use, you know, the some of the alcohol and drug use in there, that you would have an R-rated movie versus a PG-13 movie. So it's a very difficult ask for me to say, hey, this is fine for all levels of high school, and that's where it ends up being with me. I think that might be something we have to look at in the future as, broadening or fine-tuning that restriction. Like, yeah, this is age appropriate. It's not school building appropriate, and it's trying to decide where that line is. But that's the issue I have, and I feel like so many people think, well, it's based on the way you vote, you're either for it or against it based on the fact that you haven't really even considered this and you read through it quickly or you read the summary, and that's just not the case. I mean, I've read this thing twice, watched the movie, and at the end of the day, try to make the determination that I feel is best for all students, or the average student, and what the community value would be. And it's just, it's very difficult for me to say a 14-year-old is ready for all the themes that this book brings up, because in addition to the rape scenes and the sex scenes and stuff like that, you've got LSD usage, you've got abortion, you've got child molestation, you've got just domestic abuse between boyfriend and girlfriend. It's just heavy things, and I'm not saying that our kids, or some of them are not exposed to that, but it's just very heavy topics to throw at a 14-year-old, and I agree that we're not forcing them to, but at the same time, we're almost by saying, hey, this is okay for our school library, we are endorsing it as okay, and that's where I can't get there. So thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Did you have something else about the book?
We are creeping very
Let's go ahead
close.
with the vote on the book. I think we can go ahead to the vote now, and I'll come back to you if that's okay.
To extend the meeting?
I think we need to extend.
Is there any other comments on the book?
Mayor, Chairman Brewer.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, we better take the motion then.
I move that we.
I'll be really short.
Well, I move that we extend our meeting till 10 o'clock.
Or earlier.
Motion made to extend the meeting by 10 o'clock. Second from Mr. Lacy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. How many noes? Mr. Gregory and Ms. Hawkins? Motion carries. So I believe, Ms. Hayes.
Yes. Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman Brewer. As much as I am for the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, I am full on for the First Amendment, the right to free speech. And that is your written word, that is your spoken word. You had the freedom to read what you wanted to read tonight. Spoken word and art, freedom of speech. So as much as I'm for the Second Amendment, I will stand on the First Amendment. This book is not in the curriculum. Nobody is forcing your child to read the book. I've stated it at the other book banning meetings. Contact the librarian, contact the principal, contact the school. Let them know I do not want my child reading that book. I also made the statement that when one of my sons was in elementary school, I did not want him to read that book. Didn't feel he was ready and prepared to read that book. I was the parent. I made the decision for him not to read that book. I did not expect that book to be kept from other students and families who chose for their children to read that book. We've heard the words democracy. My place is not to sit and censor. That's authoritarianism. That is fascism. A small group cannot dictate what the other families, public, want to be able to read, watch, draw, speak. It comes down to those basic principles. We have measures in place. The review committees at the other high schools made the recommendation to keep the book. For that was more than the one high school that couldn't come up with a solid consensus. It's the parents' responsibility. It's the parents' right. Even with the curriculum, you can speak to the schools, the teachers. You can opt out of a reading assignment and find another one that still meets the standards of that unit. The parent has the right. I spoke up when my son was in school. Like I said, I did not expect that book be taken away from other families and students who chose to read that book. We live in a free country, the United States of America. We are diverse in our choices of what I want to watch on TV. I turn stations all the time. What our children are carrying around in their hands, the attention that we bring. I want you to know, after Long Boy, Mr. King read that. I spoke to the librarian at Hendersonville High School. Never been checked out at Hendersonville High School. Only checked out once at Gallatin. Do you know the librarian told me that 47 students came and requested that book? They can download anything they want. Books are almost becoming obsolete. Even when my boys were growing up, computers were starting to be the thing. It was a constant, full-on watch. Can't say that I caught every little thing that they did or got away with. I know I didn't. I'm not the parent. I spoke up when I was the parent and wanted to address that and keep my children from reading something that I didn't feel they were ready to read. And I'm a literature grammar girl. I love books. And I think before anybody makes a vote on a book, you need to have read it. Kudos to reading it twice. You need to read it from the front to the back. I read things in junior and senior year in high school in my honors literary classes that I had discussions with my parents about. Some things really called me to question and I struggled. And they were classic pieces of literature. You can't read the Bible without getting, listen, there's nothing new under the sun. So we could start down a slippery slope. And you're going to have people also think about the legal aspects of this. Censorship, fascism, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So parents, if you do not want your children to read the book, please contact the librarian. They flag it. They're good at what they do. Your child will not read this book. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand kids aren't forced to play sports. Kids also aren't forced to use profanity, and we don't allow that in our schools either. I'm a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. If I walk into a school building with a firearm on my hip, I'm going to prison. Why? Because we live in a society that has boundaries, and we have set boundaries to protect others. And the people that we are protecting are minors. So, we don't allow free speech in our schools. We don't allow free speech in this meeting. I'm not allowed to say per decorum what I really want to say right now. It is not about fascism in all these key words. It is ridiculous to bring that up. It is about what is contained in this book that we are discussing. We are not discussing banning books. We are not discussing communism. We're not discussing any of that. We're discussing whether or not this particular book contains explicit and detailed sexual acts and can be considered harmful to minors. We have boundaries. Kids aren't allowed to just come to school whatever time they want to. We have start times. We have rules. We have policies. Oh, and guess who creates and votes and determines those policies? This elected school board, because we represent a community.
Mr. Brown, Ms. Andrews.
Yes, I think that we have been on this subject for an extended period of time. And to be quite frank, I don't think that there's anything that anybody at this table will be able to say that's going to change anybody's mind. I think we're all ready to vote, and for that, I call the question.
Second.
Yeah, does that require a 2/3 vote? Can we do a roll call on that? So what would be 2/3? Okay. So, okay, and we're certain about that under Robert's rules, right? Okay.
Mr. Brown?
Are we roll calling or?
We'll do roll call.
We're voting on to call the question to go straight to the vote and end discussion.
Ms. Hayes? Yes. Mr. Lancaster? I'm sorry, sir? No. Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Nope.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacey?
No.
And Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
I've got 7 yes, 3 nay.
Motion fails. Discussion continues. Who was next?
There's 4 no's right now.
I'm sorry. My bad.
Yeah, Sandy's not.
I've got 6-4 right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So who's next on discussion? I see no more discussion. Mr. King.
So, okay, I'm just confused with, the motion didn't carry, I guess?
Motion did not carry, motion
Okay.
failed, so we're back to discussion on the book itself.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's getting a little emotional here. So I just want to share some things. I read the book, watched the movie, found the book to have a lot of redeeming qualities. The story, there were some enjoyable moments. The topics were heavy. Mental health, trauma, abuse, and I believe these are all important conversations that our students should be having, and I don't dispute that. I think we need to have conversations about those things. I don't think they necessarily require sexually explicit content in order to have those questions. It doesn't have to be this way. There are other ways to have those conversations. I like that the book was set in the 90s. I graduated in 95, and so a lot of reminiscent memories and from when I was in high school. So I recognize that this book has tremendous value. I'm aware it's been around for a while, like some have commented. It's received accolades and it's received awards. Many people love the book, and many have found a personal connection with the book. And no one takes any issue with that at all. No one takes any issue with any of those things. I think it's kind of nutty to suggest that somebody up here is against some of those things. But the problem here and the real issue, and as Josh mentioned, is the reason the book was challenged, and that is the book does contain sexually explicit scenes described in detail, including graphic descriptions of oral sex. Just because a book is about mental health does not give it a pass on sexually explicit content. It doesn't give it a pass to violate our policy. And like Mr. Lancaster was saying, the author who became the director of the film actually censored his own film. And he removed all of the explicit scenes from the movie. I watched the movie. It was a fun movie. You know, it was cool. So the content in this book was not appropriate for Hollywood, but yet we're saying that it's appropriate for our school libraries. And by the way, that was the point I was making when I emailed one of our speakers to point out that the content was removed because it was not deemed appropriate by Hollywood for his audience, which was minors. Okay. In fact, if the scenes in the rape scene alone that describes genitalia going into the mouth of another human being. Now, I don't know of any rated R movie that actually shows that on camera. And, you know, when we read a book, we are transported into the story. We create a movie in our minds. And I know there are plenty of books that I've read and then I've gone and seen the movie, but I remember those scenes that I read more than I remember the scenes from the movie. And when you read that passage, you immediately, it's like a video camera begins shooting. And you begin to play that scene in your head. And I think in many cases, it can be more potent than watching it on film. And so, in a sense, if we approve this book, if we approve books like this, if we approve sexually explicit content in our school libraries, we are facilitating students putting those scenes and running those scenes in the movies of their mind. And they're recreating those in their head. So we can't just ignore or turn a blind eye to the sexually explicit content. There's got to be some discussion on that. We have to have as a board, we do have to figure this out. I do find it interesting that those who want to keep the books on the shelves, this book on the shelf, refuse to discuss the sexually explicit content, or they downplay it and just kind of write it off, sweep it under the rug. It's just a couple provocative scenes in the book. It's nothing big, no big deal. I've asked several to give me some answers. And I've said, hey, if I'm going to vote on this book, I need you to give me a reason why sexually explicit descriptions of oral sex are appropriate for minors. I have yet to receive a response. Instead, I see a real effort to avoid this. We all know it's the elephant in the room, yet they don't talk about it. They avoid it, they turn a blind eye to it, they downplay it. And I think this is intentional, because deep down we all know there's something wrong with sexually explicit content for minors. We know there's something wrong here, even if some of us are unwilling to admit it. And I believe there's a real conviction of truth going on that is being suppressed. And so we have to address this. We can't ignore it. This board needs to have a discussion about sexually explicit material in our libraries. No reasonable person would say that there just needs to be, that we need to have no restrictions, that the American Library Association can send us any books and they automatically go on the shelves without vetting or whatever, or just anything goes. What are the restrictions going to be on sexually explicit content? Is there some sexually explicit content that's okay? Is there some that's not okay? And on what basis do you make that determination? On what grounds do you discriminate between, oh, this book is about mental health, so the sexually explicit content gets a pass? I mean, or this book over here has some other thing going on, and so we can remove that book, and because of that sexually explicit content. We've got to come up with, I mean, there's got to be some parameters, some rubric to make that determination. And so I refuse to accept that that there should be no restrictions. So the question tonight, what's on the table as I see it, is, are we going to go on record approving sexually explicit material in our school libraries in violation of our own policy? And to my colleagues on this board, if you're going to vote to approve this content for minors, you owe citizens and parents an explanation. For me, I've yet to receive a valid reason why I should vote to approve oral sex in a book for 14-year-olds. Maybe there's some magic formula I'm missing. And so I just want to state again that really what this is about is who is going to go on record tonight approving sexually explicit, detailed descriptions of oral sex for minors in our school libraries. Who's going to go on record? Who's going to go on record and protect kids from that content and see to it that our schools and our school libraries have age-appropriate materials? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. King. Ms. Hawkins?
I have hesitated to address the elephant in the room, but I think I'm not the only one who knows why that part of the book is so important. Number one, I fell in love with Charlie when he invited me to listen to his story when he had lost his best friend. And he invited me to hear everything about his life. And I wanted to listen. I wanted to find out. And he told me everything. In my mind, Charlie is a 16-year-old everyman. He encompasses all of the experiences of high school students. He's not every single student does. No, not every student does. But there are some that do. I'm saying if you take this student and this student and this student and this student and you put all their experiences together, maybe your student didn't experience these things, but I guarantee you there are students in our high schools who have experienced every single one of the things that Charlie experienced. Second of all, Perks of Being a Wallflower is a cautionary tale. And I know from personal experience, just like some of the other speakers here, I could have really benefited from hearing that bad things can happen to good people. That an A student, straight A student in high school, active in my church youth group. I was in youth choir. I was a good girl. I was more of a wallflower than Charlie was. He had more friends than I did as far as going out to parties. I didn't do that. I found my solace in a horse barn with other friends who loved horses. And we were good kids. And we behaved ourselves and we kept our noses clean. And nothing bad was going to happen to us. We were naive and we were clueless. And part of that is because my parents didn't want me to know things about this world. And you know what? Being clueless and naive made me the perfect victim. And just going out on a trail ride with my friends on an old quarter horse that was half blind, going down an old dirt road behind Goonie Golf and Golden Gallon and veterinary's office just to go to Shoney's and get a Coca-Cola 48 years and 4 days ago. Total stranger. I thought he was being nice, letting us ride by his car. He jumps out, he beats the out of me. Beats me up. I had injuries I didn't know were there for 4 hours after I got home. That day changed me. Clueless and naive make you a perfect victim. You want to protect your kids, educate them. This book, sure, the rape scene is horrific. When my children were growing up, I made sure they knew everything. The ugly truth. I did not want them to walk into this world thinking that it was Disney World. It's not. I prepared my children, and I'm talking about mine, you do you. My children, I would want them to read this book. I want them prepared. They're all grown now and doing great. I wanted my children prepared for the real world. So, a rape scene, yeah, that was pretty awful. And later, Samantha asks Charlie, why didn't you stop that? And he said, I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. So don't call me a horrible person for wanting to show my children, I want, and there are other parents who want to be able to show their children too. So I'm not going to stand in the way of parents. And yes, 14 years old, I was 15. It happens. There are predators out there. You educate your children. You let them know. And that's what we're trying to do here. As far as the librarians and the committees who have approved these books, Gallatin High School Committee and Librarian approved it. Hendersonville High School approved it. Merrill Hyde High School approved it. Station Camp High School approved it. White House High School approved it. Westmoreland was divided. I'm going to trust the professionals who are trained to look at their students and see their needs. I'm just going to use an example. Mr. Lancaster, you're a CPA. I'm not. I would not dare go into your office and tell you how to do your job. And I'm not going to tell the librarians how to do theirs. Thank you.
Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Lacy?
We're here to uphold Tennessee law board policy. I read the story. I actually listened to the audio books free on YouTube. If you want to listen to it, you can listen to it on YouTube anytime you want. I don't even think they had commercials on it. It was a great character. He was a likable kid, but we're here to determine obscenity. Not a good story. Is this obscene? Is detailed description of oral sex for our kids to read in this county acceptable? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Brown, I think we're ready for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, yes would be to keep it or no?
Yes is to keep it, yes.
All right, so, Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacy?
No.
Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
I have 6 yes, 4 nay.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and our action regarding bids for a soccer building for Station Camp High School. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr.
Second.
Wise, second by Mr. Lancaster. Any discussion? Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah. This is money that Station Camp High School Booster Association has raised, and they've been trying to get a soccer practice facility or field house. I forgot what I'm doing here. For a long time, I know is this boys and girls soccer? We're going to use this? Okay. Because I know the girls soccer team was having to change in classrooms at one point, and I know that this has been a long time going and a lot of money and a lot of hard work by parents to get this, and so I hope we approve it for sure. I will say it's kind of in the budget request, there is a budget amendment that actually brings this money in, so it's kind of not out of order. It's just making sure that people realize that this is money that the Booster Club has raised and now is given to the school to purchase this building.
All right, Ms. Lancaster. Ms. Andrews.
Just one question on the building. Will it have water? Will the field house have water? Do we know?
I would presume so, but I can find out. I would think so.
You got your finger on your light. Okay. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purpose budget. Is there a motion?
Mr. Brewer, actually, we have to vote on those iPads. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. It's under.
Discussion and interaction regarding amendment to the federal budget. Motion approved by Mr. Lancaster. Second by Mr. Lacy. Any discussion? Seeing none, motion carries. Oh, it's late. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, now the motion carries. Next item is what Mr. Lacy had moved off, item number 10 on number 3. Mr. Lacy.
Yes, sir. I just, like I said, when we passed the budget, like I said, I wasn't for approving this because it's going to be a recurring expense every 4 years. I talked with our state legislator. They gave us, and I apologize for not having exact numbers, around $40 million that was added into our budget this year. That money was for teacher raises, our certified classified employees to get raises. It was not for iPads. We are creating a reoccurring expense every 4 years. So like I said, I'm not for that yet. I'm not sure that some of the teachers I've talked to don't want iPads. And I'm not sure it's a great idea for every kid from 6th grade to 12th grade to get an iPad. So therefore, that's why I would like to vote on it separately. I move that, what is my motion? Let's see. I move that we do not purchase these iPads.
All right.
Is this the high school? I'm sorry. This is middle school.
Middle school.
Motion has been made not to buy the iPads. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. King. Discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Lancaster?
I'm just confused. I thought, did we not already vote on this though? That's my.
Well, I think I'm sorry, Mr. Brewer, if it's okay to speak. I think that since we pulled it off the consent agenda, we couldn't have a we couldn't have a negative because it's not funded right now. We would have to have a motion to fund the iPads instead. Because we pulled it off consent agenda. So we'd have to have a motion and a second too. Like you wouldn't have to have a motion not to fund it because we're not funding them unless, if we end the meeting, we're not funding. We'd have to have a motion to fund or to purchase the iPads with a second.
Well, we have a motion on the floor to not fund them. And a second.
Have we not already, I thought we'd already ordered them. Or we just ordered the high schools. Okay, that's where I was confused. Okay, sorry.
I think we just vote on that, and then we'll vote on 1, 2. We'll see how this one goes. Mr. Lacey?
And like I said, I was for the ESSER funds being used. I probably shouldn't be, but like I said, that was money that if we don't use, we're going to lose it. I know we have to have some iPads. I just don't know if every 6th grade through 12th grader needs an iPad, and every teacher. A lot of the teachers I've talked to, no, they do not want an iPad, and they don't want to deal with kids with iPads. So I don't want to necessarily take iPads from middle schools, but we're going to be purchasing a lot of iPads.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. King.
Oh, I'm just saying, can someone repeat the motion? It's to approve or to not?
Motion is to not approve the buying the iPad.
That's right, okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Lacey?
Yes, sir.
Motion
So
made.
would a yes be to not approve?
A yes will be not to approve. Yes is you're agreeing with the motion. So all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye or yes.
It's kind of the same thing, but either one. All opposed? No.
Can we redo that, maybe the roll call? So yes
Yes is not buying the iPads.
All right, so Ms. Hayes, Mr. Lancaster, Ms. Andrews, Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins, Mr. Wise,
No.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Gregory,
No.
Mr. Lacey,
Yes.
and Mr. Brewer.
No. Motion fails. I would entertain a motion now to fund the.
What was the vote on that, please?
That was 4 to 6.
No, he voted
Or-
7-3.
7-3, I'm sorry.
Mr. Brewer, I move that we
No, 7-3.
approve the purchase of the iPads that were pulled from the consent agenda.
Motion's been made to approve the iPads in the consent agenda. There's a second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion?
Wouldn't the previous motion just automatically?
It's just a formality.
I gotcha.
It's just a formality. Yeah, it was pulled off, so it's got to be addressed.
Okay.
All right, roll call vote. Yes means that we're going to buy the iPads.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
No.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacey.
No.
And Mr. Brewer.
Yes.
Okay, I've got 8-2 that time.
Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is discussion of study session items. Mr.
Yes, we have currently for study session in August, we've got exemption policies and then we'll take a look at our data. And Ms. Skinner, do you remember the number, just to give you a little bit of a prelude, do you remember our number of AP scholars? Was it 241? We had 241 AP scholars, our highest number in Sumner County history. So we'll have a little bit more preview of what's to come, but that's what we've got for study session.
May I ask a question?
Ms. Hayes.
Just for clarification, because I had this as a note, the exemptions, is that the exam?
Yes,
Exemptions
exam exemptions.
Across the county?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I've heard just a consistency
Mm-hmm.
across the county would be great. So good.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
We're in the process of gathering those policies for everybody to look at.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Thank you, Dr. Langford. Next item on the agenda is communication from board members. Mr. Lacy, you want to start tonight?
Yes, sir. I got last month, I believe it was last month, I got to go to a 4-H camp and got to spend the time with the kids there and got to meet the director of, I guess he's the director, the boss man of 4-H, Clint. It was a really good camp. I mean, they really invest in the kids. It's probably one of the coolest camps that I've ever been to. They've got a lot of good, unique things for the kids to enjoy. And it was a good experience, and I would definitely recommend anybody to send their kids to the 4-H camp. It was a really good deal. The school was nice enough. We had 4 buses that took us up there and brought us home. It was just a great experience, and I highly recommend 4-H.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Gregory?
Tomorrow's new student registration.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Graham?
Just want to say appreciate everybody coming out, appreciate everybody's passion, and glad we can have these debates.
Mr. Wise?
Dr. Langford, welcome to your new position. I wish for you a long and successful tenure as Director of Sumner County Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Hawkins?
And likewise, welcome, Dr. Langford.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. King?
No comment.
Mr. King, Ms. Daniels?
I
cannot get your name.
I know, I'm not married to him. He's not here. No. Jeremy would not be happy with
You know
that.
who you are.
I know. I'm content in who I am. The Lord tells me who I am, and that's what I'll stand firm on. Want to say congratulations and welcome to Dr. Langford. Exciting. I appreciate the words that you spoke in your director report and hope that we can abide by those. I'm excited about the vision. I'm excited about the future of Sumner County Schools. Ready to partner with you and just take it to the next step. It's very, very exciting. I will agree with, as a speaker earlier said, my students have had an excellent, amazing education in Sumner County. I'm getting ready to send our oldest off to college, and we have gone through the registration process and so forth, and just because of the outstanding teachers and education and opportunities that she was given in Sumner County Schools, I will say that our tuition bill did not hit not nearly as hard as it has for other families, and to that we are extremely grateful, just for what that means for her future. It's getting started on the right foot. I would also just like to give a shout out to Hendersonville High School. One of the things that was on our consent agenda is that they are going to offer American Sign Language as a foreign language. If you've been around any time, that is something that I have pushed for since the state approved that as a foreign language, and I could not be more excited about it. I hope that it does a tremendous job. I hope there's tons of kids that sign up for it at Hendersonville High School. I hope it is a raging success, because I would love nothing more than to see it across the county at all of our high schools. Foreign language, when you look at Spanish and German and Russian and all of those other languages, you can use Google Translate, but our deaf community, it is special to have people in our schools to be able to communicate with them. I think it will open doors, not just for our students, but for our community. I'm hoping it open doors for our special ed department to get more students interested. So if you have a student at Hendersonville High School, let's take full advantage of this program and let's get it, let's make it successful. Let's make it successful across the county.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. I got it right.
Thank you.
Mr. Lancaster.
First of all, I am wearing my Wolfpack shirt tonight because of one of the students there, Matthias Uribe. I just ask that everyone that will please continue to be in prayer for that student and his family. Things were looking good, and then there's been a setback, and we just pray is all I ask on that one. Second of all, we got school starting back in 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks maybe. Right now across this county there are volunteers and community and support organizations that are helping get ready for whether it be their kids' soccer team or football team or whatever, starting planning the year. And this time of year, you'll see the fundraisers, and we need sponsors and everything else. And there's just so much work that goes on behind the scenes. And I just would like to say thank you to all of those parents and community businesses that support our kids and whatever they are doing. Band, every organization. I try to share them as much as possible. Like, hey, this Liberty Creek needs a soccer sponsor or a band sponsor, or Station Camp needs one. It's a huge ask for a lot of our local businesses, and they step up, and I just wanted to make that comment and just say thank you to all of them. I got 4 things. Third on my list, next Wednesday at Liberty Creek High School, we're having there's a family engagement session. And it's 11:15, is that the right? Okay. I'm going to try to go to that, but I was just kind of thrown off by the time. But other than that, with Chris, and I cannot pronounce his last name, or I don't think I can, Nikic. Okay. But, I think it's sponsored by the special.
Yeah, he's going to be a keynote speaker at the in-service we're doing for our special ed teachers, and it is a young man who has Down syndrome and has become a triathlete. He's
but this is open.
Athlete.
I know but it's open for families as well, correct?
Yes, they're doing a session for the special educators, and they're going to do a session with parents if they will register. Right. So they'll have time with the student and his father. So it's open to parents and kids if they want to come.
I really like this family. I like the idea of having these family engagement sessions on that variety of topics. That's just awesome. But I saw that, I shared it, and I want to make people aware of that one, because there's a ton of people that definitely might want to go see that or listen to that. And last, I would have to make note is a shout out to my wife. Today is my 14th wedding anniversary. I asked her if she would like to spend time with me coming to this board meeting tonight. She debated for a good while and said no. So hopefully I can make it up to her at a later date that would do something more appropriate. But it's just one of the fun parts about volunteering time and doing things like this is you don't necessarily know when the board meeting might line up with your wedding anniversary. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Lancaster. Ms. Hayes?
Happy anniversary. Welcome, Dr. Langford. Glad you're heading the ship. And thank you, Ms. Andrews, for bringing that up. The sign language being a credited language now to take. That's been a long time coming. Poppy Steele, dear friend, has been promoting and working for this for years. She's a lawyer now, isn't she? She got her law degree. There was already a sign club in the community, and Hendersonville High School had a very strong sign language, the sign club. So now for that to be an accredited foreign language, that's amazing. I know she's doing the happy dance, but that has been a lot of work and a long time coming. Looking forward to a fantastic school year, 2023-24. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. I don't say much, but get ready. I voted to keep the book, and I had a struggle with it because I don't like the book. I don't like the language in it. I don't talk that way. When I'm flipping TV channels, when it comes that language, I keep right on going. It's like scratching on the blackboard to me. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. And that's the way I feel about it. I don't like it. I would not read it to my great-grandkids. I would not read it to my 50-year-old son. Those words do not come out my mouth. That's my opinion, but I cannot take your choice away. That's not my job here to take your choice away. And with all the filibustering going on, I was not convinced that we're breaking the law. The law's too murky. So I wanted to let everybody know why I voted the way I did, because I have been, starting in 2008, I've come against several books over the years, but they were in curriculum. They were making the kids teach them, and we got them removed. But if it's in a library, just like you have the choice to tell your kids, you don't go get that book. I'm not going to use my vote to take that choice away from you. So, again, I don't like it. It ain't gonna be in my house. Wants to be in your house, that's fine. I had people say, well, I read it to my 5th and 6th grader. I'm appalled. I wouldn't dare do that. But that's my opinion. That's my house. I can't come in your house and tell you the same thing. So that's my description for that. And one final thing before we go, I'm going to request that my colleagues here on the board, when you are responding to emails and deliberating on the emails, do not put me on the emails, please. More especially if you have that kind of language in it. I don't care if we're discussing a book or whatever. I'm offended by that language. I don't want it. If you continue to do it, I will block you and you will not have access to the chairman. So with that, good night.